And we're live, Steve. Once again,
Yeah,
it's been a while since you've been on, right?
yeah, 4 months, 5 months, something like that. But yeah, great to be back, Tony.
At least you are the most requested. It comes up in the comments all the time. When are you having Steve Maggs back? Steve Maggs says, Steve, you are more popular on my channel than I am.
Oh, I don't know about that. Well, that's cool. It's great to YouTube's wonderful. It's good to do stuff like Barrett Jackson and certain things on Motor Trend and whatnot. But the nice thing about YouTube is that we're in control of when it happens. We don't have to wait 5 months for the show to come out or whatever it is. So it's a wonderful thing. YouTube is so great to be here. Yeah.
We don't have producers or editors or advertising people that we got a completely different scene than doing the magazines because we
Yeah.
both came from that world, man. It's all politics and it's all nonsense, and this is just like send it, just content, send it.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been doing automotive TV, I guess, for, I don't know, 25 years or I don't know what it is, a long time. But I used to think in my head that 75, 90% of it was the people with the cameras, the guy with the boom mic, the makeup, all this. And I never got makeup. And maybe 5 or 10% was me. It's the other way around. It is true that overproduced stuff is truly unnecessary on YouTube. And the beauty is, if you have a story to tell, if you can see it and hear it, that's kind of all you need. And then for the longest time, I had a mental block where I thought, well, where's the crew? I don't know how to do this. Well, that's the beauty of YouTube. It's not the race to the bottom, but it's unnecessary flash is not needed here, which is awesome.
And is that exactly what I told you when you started this whole YouTube journey? It's like
Yeah,
forget all of that stuff. It's just and people relate to you better because it is you. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
no structure between you and the audience. It's
Yeah,
just
let's
you.
get let's get it again from the top without the bobble on the third word. What was my third word? Okay, we'll try it again. Take 27. Okay, here we go. It's good to have a perfect thing, but if you're shooting a movie, oh, that's a whole different thing. I mean, that's a very different thing. But this is the same thing, but a little bit different. But it's the same thing of just sharing information and to hopefully a willing audience who gets something from it. It's cool.
The audience doesn't care, bro. The audience doesn't care. And we've got a lot of our regulars in here, and our mods Zero is here, Fubar is here. I guess Ari will probably be popping by, but we've got our mods always in control, keeping things on track for us.
Cool,
Um,
cool.
getting rid of the riffraff. When are you going to start doing your own lives?
My own podcast. Well,
No,
it's
your lives like we're doing right now.
It's funny. I like to say crawl, walk, run, and I have to admit this. In all my TV experience, I look into the lens, whereas the people editing, shooting, stuff like that. My problem is that I have a relationship with High Octane Classics, a collector car sales place in Auburn, Mass, and I get their camera guy for 2 days a week in exchange for me going there one day a week doing videos about their stuff. If I had him for 3 days a week, I'd do a lot more. So what he does, Super Shane Richardson, you see him in the camera, he does the shooting and he uploads. He does that for one day with me in the junkyard. And then for the second day, he programs and uploads. So with that said, crawl. When I start to walk, yes, then I'll have Shane here because I don't know how to set up a pod or a pood or any of that kind of stuff. So Shane does that. He would.
Dude, you're doing it literally right now.
Well, I'm looking into your camera, but as far as feeding it and streaming it and stemming it and opening the valves and closing the doors, I
Okay,
don't know.
after this is over, I'm going to show you how to do it. And
All
it's literally you hit a button like that and you're done. All right.
right. Yeah.
So, but your channel has taken off. So, no, seriously, you have like one of the best success stories I know of in automotive YouTube because you started the channel, what, about a year ago, right?
Well, yeah, about 17 months, yeah, but with fits and starts. The crazy thing is the very beginning of this thing, and if anybody watches, Motor Trends, I remember Roadkill's Junkyard Gold. We did 31 episodes. It was great fun, but that was about a 7-year struggle to get a network to take that seriously. This before I even thought YouTube was a possibility. So I pitched the people at Speed Channel way back when, and then the folks at Fox Sports way back when, and then the people at Velocity way back when, and then finally Motor Trend, David Freiberger, God bless him, said, let's try that. And it became a thing on Motor Trend on demand before they refocused on cable. So there was a merger with Velocity Channel that oddly put an end to a lot of the smaller shows. I was told my show was too technical.
Yeah.
And so they doubled down on shows. I won't get into the names of them, but sort of scripted reality, which is soaked up the budget. So Dirt Every Day, a pretty good show with Fred.
Dirt Every Day was actually a good show. I'm not a dirt guy, but I used to actually enjoy that.
Yeah. So it came down to they went mainstream or whatever you want to call it. And Tony Fro, yeah.
Yeah, they had that Kevin Hart thing, and
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's an okay guy, but that's not what gearheads want to watch.
Well, I think the bottom line is they go one season and they're gone. That tells you a lot
Right.
about how many people aren't watching, but they soaked up a bunch of budget. So the crazy part was that, the thing with Motor Trend, we got good reviews, usually 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think those reviews are still there. It was a little show, did a lot. We didn't rely on anything glitzy or crazy. And then we did season 3, and the word was, well, get ready for season 4. It's a go. Like, wow, okay, cool. And I waited around for 9 months before I had to call them. And they said, nobody called you. It's canceled, Steve. That's why I do that. Canceled? What do you mean we're canceled? Which I'm so glad I can do that. But I'm glad they let me do it. But it was 7 years of trying to get that show made. And finally, when it happened, to be shut down when the Velocity merger happened, I couldn't believe it. So that's kind of, thank goodness for YouTube. I'll just say, yeah.
So you started the channel 17 months ago, right?
Yeah.
With no subscribers. You had 0.
Right. Yeah, 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where are you at right now after 17 months?
About 95,000. Yeah.
95,000 subs.
Yeah.
Dude, you have no idea how rare that kind of like performance is. It's 1 in like 10,000 channels goes from 0 to 100,000 subs in less than a year and a half.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. You have, you have, there's a couple of reasons why your channel's successful, but like, I know me, you post, so you're an hour ahead of me. You're in Massachusetts. I'm in Tennessee. So you post, I guess when you wake up is at like 6 o'clock in the morning your time.
Yeah, 6 o'clock is when they launch. But
right, which is 5 o'clock my time. So every morning I wake up, I have my coffee, and I catch the latest Steve Magnante. And I think there's a lot of people who've gotten into that habit.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, I love the comments. That's the best part. And to reveal what we do is 1 day a week. Again, I have Super Shane Richardson, the cameraman, High Octane Classics. I have 1 day a week. So usually Thursday or Friday, we go to Bernardston Auto Wrecking, and I go there prepared, ready to go. We shoot 7 to 9 videos in 1 day. And then on his second day, I go home and basically I do I research for the next week, and then they automatically upload each day at 6 a.m. We used to say, well, let's try it at 8 on the weekends. We just make it consistent, 6 a.m. And what I found is I don't know what I don't know about YouTube analytics. I just know that keep making videos every single day. But I don't go to the junkyard every day. Yeah, and make them good, and I try to do some variety. But so yeah, 6 a.m. I do. If they are better at 9, I don't know. We just launch every day. And we try to have a couple in the can just in case, somebody gets sick or whatever it is. We don't go dark. Oh, we do a rerun. We hate to do that. But it's funny. There are probably 700 or 800 videos already. But the crazy thing is, a lot of folks say, man, just discovered your channel. Awesome. Do the car behind this one. Well, we did it last week. So how do you tell these people that? So I try to send them a comment saying, well, if you like that one, go to the channel playlist and you can see 800 other videos. But it's an interesting thing, but I kind of sympathize with television. Remember watching Happy Days or Johnny Carson or any one of these old TV shows, when they go into reruns in the fall, because they only shot X number of episodes. Right. So they do reruns, but they still drew advertisers and, viewers. But it's, I would hate to be a program manager at a network in the old days, let alone now with cable. So the YouTube thing, I don't know what I don't know other than just keep making interesting stuff that interests me. If I find, we did videos this week on a couple of Studebakers, a Studebaker truck, even a Studebaker, a Timken rear axle. I don't want to tip my hand, but that's coming in a couple of days, but Timken 2-piece axle. Studebaker didn't have the money to make their own axle. So they hired Timken or Spicer to make axles for them. We found a 2-piece Timken. And if you make a video about that, just an old axle, no, far more.
See, that is another element of your channel that's addictive, because you go for the most obscure stuff. Yeah. It's material you will not find anyplace else. If you're a gearhead, you're just into cars. And it sounds like I'm doing a commercial for your freaking channel, right? But I'm telling you because I'm a fan myself. So it's like the fact that I'm going to watch your video and I'm going to find some obscure thing about something I've never heard of. I don't even know what that Timken rear end is.
Yeah.
No spoiler alert. We watch the video and check it out. But that's it. That's what does it. Because if you're a real gearhead, you love shit like that.
Well, here's the thing. We're both magazine people. You know what I mean? We're storytellers. Beginning, middle, end, and try to get it done within a certain amount of time. 4 pages or 8 minutes, whatever it might be. So you try and zero in on what's the most important thing this object's trying to tell you about itself. A 3-speed manual in a GTO. Wait, that's a 3-speed in that GTO. Which one is it? The Saginaw or the Ford, the TC piece, the 3-speed manual was a heavy duty piece. So, when you see something, but my problem was when I first started doing these videos, I had it in my head that everybody wanted to see GTOs and Chevelle Super Sports. I'm like, wow, where am I going to find all of these? The reality is, good luck. So I realized, well, let's see what happens with a 79 Blazer. Well, what do you know? People like him. How about a Saab turbo convertible? Well, what's cool about this? To me, not much. But the reality is the windshield's glued in because it's part of the structure, whereas on the Saab next to it was in there with a rubber, so it floated. So if you find something like an engineer would find, give that thing a voice and, just keep at it. It's the necessity of making something out of every vehicle that we encounter. I do draw the line on like 10-year-old SUVs and things that are kind of like who cares, but I happen if I could find a Hemi Cuda in every junkyard, but that doesn't happen. So you find something to say about everything. A little bit of research goes a long way.
Okay, so before we talk about anything else, right? Explain Katie the dog. She is so beautiful. I'm a dog person, right? And Katie is beautiful. She's such a sweetheart. Why do you blur her face out?
Okay, all right. Well, it's funny, in addition to loving automobiles and cars, I've always enjoyed comedy and just movie making, David Lynch and, John Waters movies, some weird stuff. And I'll never be. Pink Floyd. Yes. Oh, yeah. How much is that doggy in the window? What that, the divine, I won't get into it. But anyway, I did find, I planted a Pink Flamingos DVD case in a postal van one time. I really did. And it was a prop. But with that said, I like to sort of add a little goofy things. So there was Rudolph Dieselhead for a little while. We found this mounted deer head. It was, it was a piece of taxidermy. And it was this nasty, but we'd put it in a car and just have the camera roll past it and not say a word. There it is. But we'd have a little ching, 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 little Santa Claus jingle. And then there was a big plastic dog named Lockjaw. And that was just this plastic dog. We have an arf arf. It was just a little element to make it interesting for me and maybe somebody else. But the dog at the junkyard, Katie, she is a little charmer. Great little dog. We show up in the car and she comes running. Now, a little secret is that I give her a little bit of roast beef in the morning and she knows who's boss. You know what I'm saying? So she follows us around and she walks into the scene and just does something that is always wonderful. Now, the blurring of the face, there was a show called Trailer Park Boys, a Canadian show. Funny as heck. There's a guy in there named Bubbles with these thick glasses. He was just this weird geek guy, but he had cats, kittens everywhere. And every time they showed Bubbles in any scene, his cats are running around for whatever reasons. Every single cat had its face fuzzed out. I thought that was the most hilarious, funny thing. And I begged people at various TV shows I've worked on, backwards, can we please fuzz out the dog's face? And they said, no. So now that I can, I do. But now that Katie's become a little star, a little upstaging star, I let her face be shown. And, but you will fuzz her if she gets too big headed, again. But
I'm a dog guy. And she's just beautiful. You can tell, even through the video, she's just got that sweet kind of demeanor to her.
She's the best dog. I would totally marry her if it was legal. It's not. So, but she's a great puppy. Yeah, that's what that. But the fuzzing of the face was just sort of, it's a nod to Trailer Park Boys, a Canadian comedy from 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
So we were catching up on the phone yesterday or day before yesterday, whenever it was, and started talking about carnage and stuff that close calls that we've had and blowing stuff up and so on and so forth. You know what? Let's save this for a live. Let's talk about this stuff, here. So going back over your long, illustrious career as an automotive journalist, what was your closest or your most over the top experience?
Well, yeah, sometimes, we build our hot rods and sometimes, go fever kicks in. You're ready to take it for a drive. Well, you forgot to fill the radiator with coolant, and you drive it around. Oh my God. So things like that are inevitable. But also sometimes when you get the car running and all that, things can happen. And I got some props here. If you might remember some years back, I was writing for Mopar Action, and Chris Gromer said, "Hey, Steve, why don't you build?" Well, I had a '67 Dodge Dart. I worked at Stage 5 Engineering for Eric Hansen, where I was just a maintenance, just a machinist apprentice. But they made Hemi conversion heads and also rocker arms for fuelers and stuff. You probably use their stuff.
I use that stuff. Actually, this had Stage 5 rocker.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The crazy, they probably survived the carnage, but
No,
this, okay.
no,
But,
nothing survived.
but that's the old stage. It's basically, it was in Mopar Action. It was a 67 273 four barrel and an E code that
Is
I,
that a sedan?
yeah, two-door post. Yeah. 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 There it is there. And you might remember we
Oh yeah, I remember that car.
yeah.
Okay.
And Richard Ehrenberg says, well, we can give you 4 pages. I'm like, oh, thank you. So anyway, Eric at stage 5 said, hey, put that 520 stage 5, let's do it up. So we did it for the magazine. So anyway, long story short, I use it for a bunch of different props, and even like it was in hot rod, half price Hemi, and because you get the parts, you pay for them with ink. And this is the tail of the stage 5 Hemi conversion, the half price Hemi on this side here. So anyway, I brought the car to Pomona. It's before I got to hot rod, and I ran the car on M&H 2710 15s, and it went 1140s. We were kind of like hoping for some 10s, 520 cubic inches.
Is that your first time out?
Yeah, well, it was all right over and over though. The problem with it was torque converters. We had a B&M Street whole shot thing which turned black. It actually, the blue paint burned off of the thing from slipping at the top of the track. You'd be driving along, and at the top of the track, let you get back, but
Go ahead.
yeah. But when you freeze, should I stop talking, or can you hear me okay? Because your picture does.
I can hear you. I think I'm freezing just on your end, but I'm not freezing.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll ignore it. Okay. Until the producer says, But anyway, so long story short, we ran it down the track, and then it got 1140s at 121, which is okay, but it finally did go 1099 at 127 at Lebanon Valley. But anyway, to cap the day, I put a set of M&H DOT G60 15s on the back of the car, L60 15s. And at the end of the track, I would hear, it was like the day was almost over. They had the street legal drags at Pomona. So I make the pass, what? And at the top of the track, I hear, I'm like, what the hell is that noise? So I pull in the staging lanes. The guy says, hey, if you want to make another pass, get right back up there. Okay. Another 1040. I can hear it in the car. I'm pulling into the pits. I hear, and the tire was growing to the point where you can kind of see the slice. I don't know if you can. It's kind of hard.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see your hand.
Yeah, it's my girlfriend saying it actually peeled up the edge of the tire, and that was the hissing of a third pass would have been. This is a boom at 121 miles an hour. And what it turned out to be, this thing right here is a little piece of wheel opening trim that was rubbing against the tire, was growing and this thing right here. So I unscrewed the screw on it. The tire would grow just enough to grab that piece of rubber, pull it sideways, and it became a knife. And this right here. That is the leading edge of the wheel opening trim lip on a 67 Dodge Dart. I cut it so it no longer could do that to me, but this almost went pow. But I got into the pits. I heard, like, it's a tubeless tire too, by the way. Whew, so that was a close call, and Eric Hansen at stage 5 said, so how'd the car run on the phone? I said, well, the roll cage held up, and I was joking with him, but it didn't crash. But that, I still think that would have been a bad day at Pomona. And to get back to it, Pomona, as we all know, the home of the Winter Nationals, but they used to also open it to the pedestrians like us, the street legal drags, they called it, to get kids off the street. And of course, just regular people go there and race the cars. But so I think it's closed now for that kind of thing. It's only national events. But that's when you can run. I remember sitting there on the line at Pomona. I used both lanes thinking, this is where the Ram Chargers, Sox and Martin, all these guys in the 65, when they built the 2%ers or whatever it was, the legal FX cars that they ran, they couldn't run the funny cars. They were doing that over in Beeline a month later. But I thought, wow, this track, Garlitz, Tommy Ivo, Pete Robinson having a nearly, he died. Yeah, and he was in a camera with a vacuum cleaner that sucked down too hard, tires came apart. But I'm thinking, wow, I could have joined the ranks of, don't fill in the blank, but people who crash at Pomona. Anyway, but that was a close call.
Robinson, that was the bearing on the right front wheel.
Okay.
That had seized. They blamed it on the vacuum cleaner.
Okay.
Deal, but I've actually seen the entire photo sequence.
Okay.
Not just the ones that were posted in the magazines.
Yeah.
And the bearing on the right front tire had seized. It wore through the bottom of the tire. It started to spit out the tube. And then you see a shot where the front radius rod is bent.
Yeah. And it looks like he's steering out of
he's steering away from, right. And then I've seen the rest of the shots also.
Yeah.
That was brutal.
I know they took him to a hospital very close to Pomona where he hung in there for a day and then he passed, you know. But yeah, Sneaky Pete Robinson, right? Right. But so anyway, this thing, I kept this since then. This little object right here, you know, who knows, you know, what the ramifications could have been. But bottom line, never underestimate the ability of a tire to grow at high RPM. And if it's close, it's going to be closer when you're going down the track. And if you hear someone, don't make another pass. Don't be me.
You see, there's 1,000 things like that people take for granted. Like if you've never gone out and raced cars,
yeah,
whether it's professionally or just screwing around, like we're talking about here now, you never know. There's no way you could predict that.
No,
there's no way you could predict that the proximity of this piece of trim, you know, you can allow, right? But there's really no way to know until you actually go through the paces, and because you can take measurements and everything's fine, but the suspension settles out in just such a way that it moves just a half inch off to the side, and it'll bring it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I always say if I can't get my thumb between anything that might be moving. That's really playing it kind of dangerous right there. You kind of almost want, you know, but with that said, just a little flashback. If you came to California, I know the extension was there. Ro wanted you to come out to Cali. I remember that. But anyway, if you did, this is how you would have sent your stories in. This is a story envelope. Department 113 is Hot Rod Magazine. Peterson Publishing, the late, great Robert Peterson. And we can see here on the top, this is from, hang on, this is February 3rd, 1998. And what we do is we take pictures in black and white, and then we would get a contact sheet, and then you would get the film on the back. You would circle the images you wanted to use. Remember this whole time? And now digital.
Yeah. Well, now you say now Ro wanted me to go to California when I told him there's just no way I'm going to California, because my whole life was in New York at the time.
Yeah.
And I was with several different race cars. I was partners on a Top Fuel car, and I had my own fuel altered. And I was tuning a bunch of cars and working on a bunch of cars in the area. So there was just no way I was going to give that up to go to California. Yeah. So at that point, he says, fine, we'll open a New York office. And he was actually going to start an East Coast office.
Yeah.
And I was going to run the East Coast office. And I just didn't want to do it, man. I just wanted cold turkey from everything.
Yeah. Another thing too is, since 1948, Hot Rod never missed an issue, and every month I did it for 7 years. I was part of 77 issues. I was there from Tuesday, August 19th, 1997 through Tuesday, January 20th, 2004. 77 issues, and after a while, it burns you down. It really does. People go 3 years typically. I don't know, any number of folks, and I went 7, but I eventually just, it wasn't.
That's how I was. I did 3 years at CSK, and then, I did 3 fun years, and then the 4th year was just like, I'm done with this. And then I did 1 year over at Harris, and then I got back into it. And I did 3 years with freelancing and working with Collison at Superstock and Drag Illustrated.
Drag Racing Monthly.
Yeah, I had 3 years of that, and I was like, I'm done, right?
Yeah, freelance is a little better. I do remember working for Cliff Gromer. That was one of my first, before I even moved to California. But anyway, early on, Cliff Gromer would have me do stuff for Mopar Action, and I would go to the local video nook where you'd rent your VHS tapes, and they had a fax machine, $2 a page. So I would fax printed stuff to Gromer, who would then have a secretary enter it into text for Mopar Action magazine. And, and I'd send him the bill for the fax, and it was, $16 to get 20 pages through. And, it's funny how electronics, this thing right now that we're doing, just has opened up so many doors. Social media is killing the world. No, I don't think so. There's a lot good going from it. It's everything, but.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, because social media like Facebook and Twitter and whatnot just has absolutely brought out the worst in humanity.
Yeah, I ignore it. Yeah.
I ignore it too. I tune it out too. I don't need negative noise in my life. But the flip side of that is that the technology allows us to do this stuff. So when I started, you go back to 1986, or was it 1985? I think I started at CSK in 1985. Everything was typewriter and those contact sheets.
Yes.
Right, contact
these days right here, Tony. There it is, man. That's you.
That was
the 88 IROC Z 350 torture test. That was you.
So I know that was the end of it, though. That was the end of the line for me, man. I was already, by the time that magazine came out, I was burnt. I just, but it was all manually typing. And I remember the IBM guy came in trying to sell the office on computers.
Right.
So just a side note, it's like this is too inside for the show, but
That's right.
so if you have that magazine, right, open to the front of it. There's where the columns are.
Yes. The
Okay.
names. You wrote them all, right? You were saying you made up like this right here. You mean the Brunsnowski brothers and
The Brunt brothers. Well, yeah, I wrote all of the columns. I wrote Steve Schneider's column. I wrote Cliff Scorber's column. But turn a couple of pages and find Tim.
Yeah. Like the start, back torque and letters. You mean this sort of thing right here?
Go one more page, I think.
Okay. There's a PAW ad, and of course Tim, the Q&A guy.
Okay, yes, Tim. So, Tim, he's showing a Corvette. I'm driving actually.
Here we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
It's Tim.
Tim was that was the question guy. That was the question and answer guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we made him up at an office party over at I can't remember his name. The art director, Morgan.
Okay.
Okay. So we had a party at his house, and we were blasted. We were watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Morgan Smith.
Morgan
Smith. There he is. Okay. Go ahead.
We were watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and I had to come up with a tech column for it. They wanted me to make up a tech column. This was all from on high.
Sure.
I had to do a question and answer.
Yeah.
So I went into the office. It was like straight from this party. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I banged out this column real quick. And I had this Tim, the Enchanter from you familiar? Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
It's been years, but I know the horns come out from the sky.
Yeah.
Vomit on New Year's Eve usually, but yes.
So I kept thinking back to that. I kept thinking back to that scene and falling out as I was typing this stuff out. So anyway, now we needed a picture. So now it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and Carol, I forgot what the girl's name was. She comes in, she says, "Okay, did you have the manuscript for the tech guy?" I says, "Here, what's his name?" I says, "Tim. His name is Tim." She says, "Tim what?" I says, "No, it's just Tim, right?" So she put that in. So she says, "Well, I need a picture of this guy." I says, "All right," and I'm looking around, and the IBM guy who was in the office trying to sell the office computers, he had a picture on his card.
Yeah.
So I picked up the card and I says, "Oh, her name was Marilyn?" I says, "Marilyn, here's Tim." So I gave her the card. She says, "I can't use that guy's face." I says, "Change something, put hair on him or something like that." Right?
Yeah.
So she came up with that.
It was Marilyn Pierce.
Marilyn, right? So she came up with that.
This is going backwards with this. It's a left, right. Anyway, but yeah, Marilyn. But yeah, the magazine. You want a YouTube channel. If there was such a thing as a magazine still around, that would be one hell of a YouTube channel. Just the behind the scenes, of course, that ship is left. But I'm sure you guys had stories to tell and then some. You know,
that's constant. It was a zoo. It was a zoo. It was a lot of fun. You know.
But at the same time, it was a treadmill that doesn't stop. I remember that 77 issues of Hot Rod. I mean, I never took Prozac in my life until I got there. You know, no joke. You know, and I had good health insurance because you were salaried and stuff. I'm like just always angry. You know, I drive in every morning. 31 miles would take 2 hours, and I get to the business to 6420 Wilshire, and I get in the elevator just feeling funky, ready to go home. Doctor says, "Hey, take Prozac." But no, that's for crazy people. He says, no. He says, "You take Prozac so you learn new ways of handling stress, so that when you stop taking the Prozac, you remember those ways." I'm like, oh, and it helped. You know, it also a hell of a buzz if you're drinking beer, by the way. Just don't, I'm clean sober now. But with that said, it drives you. It is a treadmill that never stops. So it is fun, but at the same time, you're going to keep banging them out. And before electronics, you had to do that in the office. You couldn't
manually. Everything had to be typed out manually.
Yeah.
See, I blew off the steam. I was stressed off the map doing that kind of work, but I was street racing 7 freaking nights a week at that time. So it was like, all right, fine.
Making money, or was it for fun or both?
Occasionally, but it was my job to go out and street race and take these test cars and do all this other stuff and be aware of the scene and who's doing what.
Yeah.
So we would go out street racing literally 7 nights a week.
Wow.
We go to the drag strip Tuesday night, Friday night, Sunday, and then afterwards go drag racing, street racing afterwards. I can't tell you how many times I would roll into the office in the morning coming straight from Front Street in Philadelphia or Deer Park, right? And get there, I got to go to work.
I got to ask, were you seen as a hero showing up at the street races? Hey, it's Tony from the magazine, because I thought it was a big deal.
I kept a low profile. Like
Yeah, yeah,
some people recognize me, but like even today, I keep really low profile. I just
yeah.
I stay in my own world. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
I say this as I'm sitting here talking to however many people are out there. I stay in my own little world and I pretend that I'm just me. There's
Yeah,
nothing going on around me.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, being in hot rod, I mean, your head can get a little fat. Mine, it didn't happen. I just realized we're all just people in the end, and the closer you are to people, they're just people. It's all good.
It's a
And they're good.
job. I try to tell people, because a lot of, wow, what's it like to do that? It's a job. It's like any other freaking job. If you hang aluminum siding, that's your job. If you make pizzas, that's your job. If you do YouTube, that's your job. If you're a magazine writer, it's your job. It's just a job. It's just what you do to pay the bills.
And it is sometimes, the access to people. There's John Force. I got to meet him. He had a drag racing school. That's when I still had black. That's me there. That's John on the right, as you can see.
Do you know how many times we raced against him?
No, what it was, there was a thing, the Mr. Gasket Media Challenge, and they had different magazines, Scott Parkhurst, all these different people from different books were all invited by the Frank Hawley Drag Racing School to attend the school. So we did that, and Forces there and stuff like that. And we had to run econo dragsters, like 960 dragsters. They were pretty darn quick. But Scott Oldham won the whole shooting match from Popular Mechanics, I think it was, Joe Oldham's son. But it was a lot of fun. But the meeting people was one of the thrills. I met Ronnie Sox, Buddy Martin. I bought Bill Jenkins a beer one time at PRI, and it's just, that's a neat thing. But in the end, it's a job, and you're going to keep pedaling.
So when I first started with the fuel cars, it was at the same time that I was doing Cars Illustrated.
Yeah.
It was a weird life I was having. I was doing magazines during the day for the bulk of my living, right? And then I did the street racing every night. And when I wasn't street racing, I was helping on fuel cars, and I was learning that whole bit. So when I first started, I was like a helper on Jerry Caminito's car and Bobby Lagana's car, the Twilight Zone. They were both local to me. So anytime, and at that period of time, Force, it was before he had the Castrol sponsorship. He had Wendy's.
Yeah, Brute. Okay.
The Wendy's Hot and Juicy Corvette, and he was still a leaker at that point. So he was just one of the guys that would come through. You know what I mean? Like the tracks, like Englishtown, were booking 16 fuel cars, and it was like a circuit more or less.
Sure.
So those races would come, and he was just another guy in the crowd. It was
right.
He was no different than the rest of us. And he got the Castrol money and hooked up with Austin. And then the next thing you know, boom, he owns the world. Right. But through that period of time when I was like learning the whole nitro thing, and I was going from car to car to car, I can't tell you how many times we lined up against him, over the course.
Was his car?
We actually burned the car to the ground on live TV. So I'll tell this one real quick, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. I was with Lagana at the time, and I had gone beyond just a mechanic, and now I've got a say in the running of the car, the tuning of the car. So we made 3 qualifying runs. This was at Englishtown, the Mopar Parts Nationals. So we made 3 qualifying runs, and ran a 577, it was like 3 runs that were like 577, 575, and then 571, whatever it was. There were 3 consistent runs. Everything was great. On the last qualifying hit, and we ended up qualifying 16. There was like, I'm going to say probably close to 30 cars, and we qualified right in the middle of that, number 16. So we had Force in the first round. On the last run, the last run on Saturday night, the baffles in the oil pan broke at the finish line. So the oil ran away from the pickup. So now we get the car back to the pits, drop the pan, and it's just carnage. It's just everything in there is destroyed. Didn't throw any rods, okay? Wow. But it turned every bearing, main and rod. Just it destroyed. So the way this works now is that if you get $6,500 first round loser money.
Okay.
Right? So in other words, you can qualify, but you don't get paid for qualifying. You get paid for first round loser money. So you have to, Sunday morning, your car has to be on the start. You got to complete a burnout.
Right.
That's part of the rules. Okay. You got to complete a burnout. And
Right.
you got to stage the car. And if the car takes the green light, you get $6,500.
Okay.
All right. So now we work all night. This is Saturday night. We work all night, and we're trying to figure out how do we get this thing to we're out of parts. There's no parts. Okay. How do we get this thing to just do a burnout and stage and leave on the green? And like I said, we got forced in the first round, so it's like it's silly to even consider it. All right. We finally, it had tore the guts out of the block, out of the saddles. We cut up Coke cans.
To shim it up.
To shim it up, right? You've seen stuff like that, right? We cut up Coke cans to shim it up. We got rods we got 4 different length rods that were in there, all different pistons and stuff. Just there's enough stuff to make the motor rotate. Yeah. So we finally we buttoned it all up, and now the plan is to
put 30 quarts of oil in the thing and fill it up with oil.
Yeah, a case of oil, right? It took a case anyway.
Okay.
So the plan was we're just gonna do a burnout, just go whoop, whoop, like that, stage the car. When the light turns green, roll through the beams so that the timer starts and shut it off, because that's all this car is going to be capable of, right? So now I had been up for days straight, and my house was only 22 miles away. So it's early Sunday morning now. I says, listen, guys, there's no reason for me to stick around for this, right? I'll see you at home, pay me then, and we're good to go, right? I go home. I wake up in the morning, right? I turn on the TV. So help me from laying I'm done, right? I turn on the TV, and there is Bobby, the driver, climbing out of the escape hatch of the car on fire.
Wow.
What the hell happened? So I get in the car and I run right back to the track. I'm like, what happened? There's nothing left of the car. The body is ashes. Every wire, every line, everything, the anodizing is all burned off the tin, okay? I go, what happened, okay? And Bobby's like, I had him treed. What? He said, I had him. He hit it. Evidently, Force was kind of sleeping. Bobby had a good light. Bobby realized he saw the corner of his eye. He didn't see Force, so he decides to leg it. It goes out 300 feet, and it literally threw the entire guts of the engine down into the track. Burned it to the ground. Burned everything to the ground.
So the loss was like 26,000 for the 6,000. Yeah, right.
More than 26. That was brutal.
Yeah. Well. And speaking of Lagana, does this look familiar to you? Is that Lagana way back when?
Yeah, the Chevrolet Mocha.
There's a lot of weird things that happen in this world, Tony. This has been on my wall for a while. You're talking Lagana. I'm thinking, I know who that is. But yeah, this car has been restored. But this is the way back when he was, still. My camera.
Put that closer to the camera.
This lens sucks. You know what I mean?
So that was a Falcon funny car that he built.
Yeah.
Okay.
This lens sucks. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's all right. That was a Falcon funny car he built in 1967.
Yeah.
Right? Cars had already gone to flip top and all of that, but
it's still around. It's still around. They restored it. I know he's not around, right? Lagana, is he still around?
He passed about 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, this was in India about 6 years ago. They had it on display. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's cool. So Lagana, you see that? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's cool. So the making money in drag racing, we all know how that ends, obviously, but it's
I made money in drag racing.
Okay. Yeah.
I figured out ways to make, I'm a schemer, man. I'll always find a way. And I found a way to make money in drag racing. Yeah. By being the fill-in guy.
Yeah.
So I knew every position of the car. So I could be a clutch guy, I could be a diver, I could be a tuner, I could be a blower guy, I could be a top end guy, I could be just a general overseer of things. So because I knew every position and I was proficient at every position, as cars would need their clutch guy is sick or
stormed off,
off or whatever it is, I'd get the call, and I'd be like, and I'd tell Kathy, it says, see you in a few days, and I'd just jump in the car, go to wherever I had to go, and then that was it, got paid.
Now, it's funny. I'm always like a rear axle fanatic. And I know these days, of course, Strange makes these huge 12-inch ring gears, this cool bathtub stuff. But I remember reading once, Don Garlett said he used to like an open differential in his fuel cars. Is that even a thing? No, right? Was it a welded spool, or was it truly an open diff?
The front engine cars all had open diffs. That was universal. It was across the
How does
board.
it not unload and go up in smoke? You see pictures once in a while, the right tire doing this, the left doing that, but how does it load evenly? Because I know
Easily.
theoretically.
It's easy, right? Motor is lifting up on the left. Okay, so picture your car. Okay,
Sure.
motor is lifting up on the left front. The torque reaction is lifting up the right
Yeah.
rear. Okay.
Yeah.
But now, if you take these two pieces and you remove the suspension, but put them close together,
Okay.
what's happening is the engine torque is canceling out the lifting of the right rear.
Okay.
See, so that it'll plant both tires evenly.
Okay.
And the idea here now is, as the car goes down the track, one tire is allowed to slip a little bit,
Okay.
and the other one will maintain traction, and the car will go straight. But if
Okay.
you lock them up, now the car is going to want to scoot around.
All right. How long do these I mean, they have a spool in the modern ones, obviously, right? There's no
Obviously, yeah.
differential.
We're
So
talking 1971 and early,
Yeah,
72 and
okay.
earlier.
Because I remember he would have an 8 3/4. You'd see pictures of Garland's Swamp Rat when he finally went rear engine. He had an 8 3/4 in there, not even a Dana, not even a 9-inch, just an 8 3/4. And he's talking an open different. That's going to be a typo, I'm thinking. But
No, that was the standard. I had a Woody Gilmore Flexi Flyer. That was a 1966. It was a front engine dragster built by Woody Gilmore, and I had the last of the cars with the Oldsmobile rear in them because he went
right, the 64 back, the big pumpkin.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Buick Bulls.
It was a Mickey Thompson.
Pontiac. Yep.
Yeah, it was a Mickey Thompson magnesium center, but it had a stock Olds Pontiac ring and pinion and spider gear setup.
Okay. And they weren't welded; they're just open. Welded would be as bad as a spool, because I guess it's true that if you have a welded rear end, you can it enters its own set of problems, I guess.
Okay. Well, there was a guy in Florida that went by the name of Major Cookski. Okay, and he was the 8 3/4 guy. He used to set up the 8 3/4 for all of these cars back in the day. The dragsters use 8 3/4. The funny cars use Danas and 9 inches, because the funny car loaded differently.
Okay.
All right. So, but the dragster didn't. So the dragster used the lighter duty rear, and then the funny cars used the heavier duty rear. So Major Cookski in Florida was the guy he was the go-to guy to set up these rear ends, these 8 3/4 for top fuel guys. And what he would do is he would shim. He had very, very, very thin shims, and he would shim the spiders so that there would be just the right amount of resistance, just the right amount to give.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And it's funny, speaking of close calls, this is me at the Frank Hawley Drag Racing School right there in my, I don't know, it was like a big block Chevy Power Glide trans brake. This lens sucks. But anyway, with that said, but, I did okay, made it 2 rounds. What we had to do, they had, I think, 3 dragsters and about 6 or 7 drivers. So what they had was you pull a hat and you would go to the dragster you pulled out of the hat. So you couldn't be, and then you had to do a dial in and predict what it's going to run. So it was truly a crapshoot, but it was a lot of fun. Made 2 rounds out of it. But that was the quickest I've ever been in a car. I went, where'd we go? I think it was 6. It was probably a 920 or something like that at 160, which is cooking along pretty good. And they said, don't use the chute, please, if you don't have to. I remember, you still get on the brake, but don't bounce the damn thing. And I got to say, one idea at Pomona, I guess all tracks, there's a saw cut in the track. I had no clue about this, but when you're sitting down, there's actually a saw cut right down the middle, which is where it's there for the benefit of rail drivers to see the little line, put the middle of the car and sit on it and don't steer, just go, but you don't even see the saw cut unless you're sitting down in a chassis on the track, ready to go. But that was cool. But using the trans brake and the 2-speed Power Glide, it shifted by itself. All you had to do was just release and go, and it would shift at 58. It was a big old rat motor, But
so the first time you drove it, right?
Yeah.
How far did you go before you had the urge to pull your foot off because you think you've already gone to the end?
They told us, be careful, it might frighten you, and I said, just bury it, Steve. And I did have to resist the temptation to go, whoa, it is true. But I ran it through. You can see the light coming up. But the other thing too is remembering, in a thing that has a 200 and whatever inch wheelbase, turning very, being very deliberate, and don't go too far because you cannot turn around, So you just think there's plenty of shutdown and runoff there. But that was a fun thing. The only thing I've been as fast in was about 8 years ago, Dodge loaned me a Scat Pack Challenger 6.4 automatic, and I went 163 on it, down over in Sturbridge, and the damn thing will go 163, maybe a little bit more. It took a while to go from 140 to 16. It's a stretch of road over there next to Route 84 in Southbridge, Mass. I didn't do this, I didn't say it. But I got 163 out of the thing at 2 a.m. I went down there first. It's a 2-lane pretty wide road, and made a reconnaissance mission, went all the way down, came back to the top. Okay, here we go. Woo! But that was a 163. And to me, a modern muscle car, the old ones and the new ones are equally important. It's an awesome thing. And by the way, as you may or may not know, the Charger electric car is groovy. But there's a gas version coming, as you probably know.
And I didn't know that. I thought it was going to be just electric.
Yeah, the last call thing is a very smart marketing strategy. The '08 Up Challenger is an American icon. They're not going to let that go. What's probably going to happen, Challenger goes away, but there will be Chargers in 2-door and 4-door, in gas and electric, and they'll have Typhoon turbo motors and Hemis. So fear not, it ain't over. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, this is the first I've heard of that. That's pretty cool.
And the thing too is, well, don't go to the Challenger. But if they do that, see, the Charger will be a 2-door or 4-door, and a 2-door Challenger and a 2-door Charger in the same spot are going to fight each other. So I think what Dodge is probably going to do, it's possible the 2-door variant of the Charger platform may be called Challenger, but I think they would do no harm in bringing back the Charger name on a 2-door and a 4-door with electric or gas. And I'm sure the electric version will account for 20% of sales, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening, but it's not the end. It's not.
I doubt they're going to get 20% of sales out of it.
Yeah, I'm saying if that, they'll be college professors and forward thinkers. Just saying,
all of the manufacturers are backing off now on that whole electric thing because they realize this is not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm all for clean air, and I sympathize with everybody. But with that said, I'm still pissed about OPEC and the bumper mandates. In 1973, as you know, 5-mile-an-hour bumpers. What the stupidest thing? Lawmakers said, hey, you have to build cars now that don't cost us money to repair, but only in a 5-mile-an-hour impact. Ding. And the thing of it is, they had about another 120 pounds of mass on the car while they're trying to save fuel, and they're cleaning up the motors by decontenting them. They use more fuel to be more. It was stupid. But I go to the junkyard, anything from 72, 73 through about 80 is just an absurd Rube Goldberg collection of goofy ideas. And the problem is, if you are over 5 miles an hour, the cost of repairing and replacing the shock absorber things and the fascias is way more than a stock bumper. This is what happens when lawmakers start designing cars. So with the electric thing, here we go again.
The bumpers that were supposed to come back, that was in theory. That worked in theory. It never worked in practice.
And they added 100 pounds. It was stupid. It was really dumb. And what 2 cars ever hit point on? They don't. And it was just a goofy thing, So I sympathize with car makers who are told, thou shalt cafe 90 miles per gallon. Make it happen. We don't care how. But that's the electric car thing to me. There's a bunch of hype going on. And, I also think in the junkyard, there's going to be 600 pounds anyway of lithium when these cars are scrapped out per car. Where's that going to go? Nobody's answering this.
It's the most harebrained thing that has ever been launched to the American public.
Yep.
It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah. And I got to say,
they're all backing off now. They're all backing off now.
Well, there's a mandate, as you know, so I think it'll be fleet cars and government fleet pool cars, motor pool, and people aren't asking for these things. And the other side of the coin is, where the hell are you going to charge it? If you have street parking, is that cable going to be there in the morning? No, it's copper.
But here's the thing: there is a mandate. There's no question about it. Right. But a mandate is not a law.
This is true. Yeah.
A mandate is not a law. It's a suggestion. It's a guideline. It's not a law. So it's like, mandate whatever the hell you want. The bottom line is the public votes with its dollars, and the public does not want to sit in a charging station for a half hour to drive another 75 miles. It just ain't going to happen.
Yeah. And, I got to say, I just, when you come back, I just bought a, oh, there you go.
Did I freeze?
Yeah. Okay. I'll just sit out when you do, I guess, because I can't tell what's going on. But yeah, I just bought an 87 Corvette, and it has the 4+3, the Doug Nash manual transmission. The whole purpose of that thing's existence is to avoid the gas guzzler surcharge of $750, which would have hit people in 1987, and also General Motors. So
that was the one that automatically shifts itself from.
It's a Super T10 4-speed, and what happened in the late 70s, Borg Warner sold its manual transmission holdings to Doug Nash of Franklin, Tennessee. Right. Yeah, and he said, "Well, I can make this work," because they had so few manual transmissions. Warner says, "Get rid of that tooling," and the T5s and stuff, but the T10 stuff was sold to Doug Nash, and then he came up with a small planetary gear set, like a miniature Power Glide, frankly, with an oil pan, and that goes on the back.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so you go first gear, and then second overdrive, and then third overdrive, and fourth, and basically you can cruise along at 800 RPM at about 42 miles an hour. And the Corvettes have this. It's real. It's average mile per gallon. I can get 27.1 by driving like the old man that I am. So it works. And you can also defeat it by pushing the button down on the shifter for 3 seconds, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, no problem. But that kind of crazy stuff was all about avoiding the gas guzzler surcharge, and the cafe standard was arbitrarily inflicted. Remember the 55 mile an hour thing? Remember the metric system? So it's I have sympathy for everybody involved. Put it like that. So anyway, but there's a popular podcast called The Inevitable.
That's not a popular podcast. Nobody watches it. I've seen a couple of episodes of it. It gets like 3,000 views.
I call it The Inevitable Bullshit, is what I call it.
Right.
So just saying, Anyway, but yeah.
Don't trigger. I'm sure we got a couple of EV people here. Don't trigger them.
Well, yeah.
I have nothing against. I say this every time. I have nothing against electric power for a car.
Sure.
It doesn't confuse me. It's just another form of motivation. I have a problem with it being shoved down people's throats, and I have a problem with propaganda that leaves out facts.
Yeah, hype.
That's what I have a problem with, right? Or even hype. I'm okay with hype. Yeah, be excited about it. Just hype it up, but do it on the basis of its own merits, not.
Yeah, give me the whole story.
Right, give the whole story. Let's talk about
how do we plug it in?
The 11-year-old kids mining lithium, right? How many? I remember reading the actual stats on this. They got to move like 400,000 pounds of dirt to make one lithium-ion battery. How much diesel fuel are they using to move all of this dirt and process all of this lithium?
And how about I'll be 58 July 14th, 3 days. I'm 59, 59. My God! But I remember in the 70s when all of a sudden the Honda Civic and the Volkswagen Rabbit looked like pretty good ideas, and they were good cars. And the word was on downsize, no V8s, and then we don't learn anything, which is awesome. We have SUVs again, and they're clean and they're decent. But now electric cars, they weigh 2 tons. A Civic that weighs damn near 2 tons, that was 1,600 pounds when it was first conceived. So, I mean, how is that? It's just interesting when I feel badly for the car makers who are told, make it happen. And then 4 years later, the political situation changes and we can forget it. Don't worry about it. It's troubling. But at the same time, hey, somebody's going to run the joint. I'm glad it's not me. That's what I want to say.
I was a kid. I guess it was 1976. I was 14. So my uncle Reno, he was a highway cop, right? Wow. And he had a thing for big cars. He was always Lincoln Continentals and just the biggest thing possible.
He probably saw enough road crashes where people get killed in Pintos and Mavericks, little cars.
Well, he shows up one day and he's driving a new Honda Civic.
Okay.
He traded his town car for a Honda Civic. And it was the first one of those I'd ever seen. I thought it was the coolest car.
Yeah. Was it brown? Was it dark brown?
Actually, yes, it wasn't dark brown. It was like a cream color, like a light brown cream color.
Just as the Pontiac GTO Judge launched in orange, the first 1,000 units, there was a launch color for the Civic and the Rabbit. Remember that weird thing? Kind of weird. Yeah, it's kind of but they were the right cars for the time. Certainly better than a Vega or a Pinto. Although those are cool cars, but they showed the world how it's done. Because front wheel drive is frankly the best way to utilize, from the firewall back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But there's no soul in those cars, although they're interesting. I guess a clean original, I dig it. But back then it was so common. It just and they weren't built for the right reasons. They were. But hey, it's not mine.
But those Civics really, those cars form the template for everything that you have out there today.
Yeah.
There were obviously transverse front wheel drive cars before that, going back to the 1900s, right? But the Civics were the first ones that were imported in mass and accepted by the American public in mass
as an alternative to all the Cafe and OPEC.
Then the Volkswagen Rabbits, which I believe were started. They started importing those before the Civics, but they were like very obscure. Like they were British cars. Like they were bringing in the Hillmans and
yeah, right.
Okay, but the Civic made it acceptable.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, it's like pretty much the whole the world of modern cars out there, regular cars, not hot rods or muscle cars, all go back to the Civic. That was the car that made it okay.
Yeah. And little known fact, a lot of people think that the Plymouth Horizon and Dodge Omni, the hatchbacks of '78, were ripoffs of Volkswagen. They go back before the Rabbit. They were based on Talbots, French Simcas,
That's right.
The bones of those cars go before the Rabbit. Now, it is true that Chrysler did utilize some Rabbit short blocks from Germany, some Volkswagen stuff, but the Rabbit,
1.6s.
yeah.
The 1.6 was a Volkswagen motor.
Right. But it's a thing where a lot of people think, oh, Chrysler ripped them off. No, but it was a French thing, is what it was. The Simca, interesting. But but they were the right cars, and the K cars. I mean, they saved Chrysler. I get it. They were the wrong car at the bad time, is what they were. But so I don't know. When I encounter them in the junkyard, I give them respect. I cover them, but I'm like, wow, I get a stomach ache thinking back about those times. I remember you wrote how the 5-liter Mustang was the Roadrunner of the '80s, and how true. And you wanted to buy it with a rubber floor mat, but they couldn't sell that. I remember you were writing about that. I'm like, yeah, it's true.
I remember, and I guess this is 1976. The new car buyer's guide came out, that showed, and I remember it had all illustrations. It didn't have photographs.
Predictions. They were sort of like, right. The next best thing. Yeah.
And I remember seeing all of these pictures of these cars and these downsized things that they were bringing out, and just being floored, depressed. It was like as close to like an existential crisis I've ever had in my life.
So I wasn't the only one. Yeah, it was depressing.
It was horrible. It was horrible.
One exhaust pipe.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 17 inches. Like, I want a pistol grip. I want, I want big stuff, right? And then here they're making all these, like the GM cars with the slope backs and
85 mile an hour speedometers. The 55 mile an hour. The crazy thing is, when I go to the junkyard, like I say, if I found all Roadrunners, it would be horrible, it'd be sad, but I'd have something to talk about. But when I encounter Volvo 122S or whatever, fill in the blank, I kind of have to find things to say about it. And I start to study a little bit about, why cars were the way they were. And it's, government mandates, which, okay. And if that becomes a political thing, I won't get into that. But it is crazy that the 55 mile per hour mandate, it's from Wikipedia, et cetera, but apparently it was meant to save 2%. 2%. That's it. Now, here's the thing. They slowed down the pulse of the economy. Truckers, you and me, from 60 or 70, they slowed it down. They added hours and basically, what does that do to the economy in the long haul? And I do remember too, as a kid, riding on the Massachusetts Turnpike behind a row of 3 state police cars. They were pretty cool, Ford LTDs, blue and gray, but all going 55. You do not pass them. And that was the whole thing. It just seemed like a weird time. And that went for a while. It was a strange. So I say that, that really kind of bent my brain and made me look back. Hemis, Bosses, and I found a stack of Superstock magazines in '75 that were 10 years old. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, Ronnie Socks, Dick Landy, and what? Pinto Pony MPG, Mustang 2, and Carroll Shelby putting his name on those things. Remember those Shelby 2, Cobra 2 things? And I mean, they're neat, but they were not neat when they were new because there was nothing better. Anyway.
So you go back to exactly this period of time, right? 1976, 1975, and the magazines were just doomed. Okay, it was all vans. It was like road race stuff. They were trying to push the IMSCA, whatever the frick it was, right? Okay, and I'm like, no. Okay? So I found I used to wander around Manhattan. That was like the thing to do at the time, right? Go to Manhattan, go get some drugs, go to a pizza or whatever.
What the kids do.
This is what you did when you're 15 years old, 14 years old in New York City, right? So I found
waiting for my man, $26 in my hand. Lou Reed. Anyway.
I found a backdate magazine store on West 43rd Street. Okay, and it was all old magazines, and they were cheap. They were like 25 cents each. And New York was such a great place back then, and I found all of these old magazines, and I would go back there religiously, like once a week, and go through. They bring in new boxes, always boxes of magazines, and I would go through all of the boxes looking for Carcraft and Superstock and all of these Drag Racing USA.
Yeah.
And that I studied those magazines like it was, like a rabbi studies,
the Talmud.
Okay. Right, exactly, right. I studied and studied and studied, and that's how I learned as much as I did at like that age.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I'm glad I grew up then. And a lot of kids, Shane Richardson, my camera guy, he's 25 and he loves Subarus. And he says, man, that sound, that boxer, that four banger, he's WRX STI. They're interesting. And I says, I mean, he works at High Octane Classics, so he sees Hemis and stuff like that. He understands them. But I guess I understand that, the things you grow up with are the things that leave a mark on you. And luckily, I remember muscle cars when they were in the hands of their second and third owners on their way down to the junkyard. But I still knew they were cool. In our town, there was a 1970 Sport Fury GT, white with the 440. That was, remember, the rapid
Oh,
train.
nice.
Yeah, cool car. And the guy actually took the 440 out, put a 318 in it to get better fuel economy. And then the car just sort of unwound and raveled and became junk. But I remember the car was maybe 6 years old, thinking, wow, that's Daddy Longlegs from the Rapid Transit ad. Sport Fury GT with a strobe stripe and had the right wheels, and it was just a gas hog to this guy who took the motor out and put a 318 in it to get better fuel economy. So it was a weird time, but again, hindsight 2020.
My friend Mitch, his name was Anthony Michio. We used to call him Mitch, and he had a blue 71 Challenger 3D3. This is in 1977. Okay,
Yeah.
I was surrounded by Mopar people, right? But only we were kids. I mean, we were legitimately like kids. My friend Danny had a 71 344 speed Duster,
Yeah.
and this is what we did, man. Right? This is what So Michio had this Challenger, and the Challenger was always broken. We were always blowing shit out, always breaking things, electrical fires and spinning bearings. The car was always apart, right? And his mom had a 70 Fury 3-3. It was a 3-3 4-row.
Yeah.
And we spent as much time stealing his mom's car and rolling around, flipping the air cleaner lid upside down,
Right. Yeah.
We did more burnouts in that Fury. And then we would go out and steal tires.
Okay. Burn them off.
We burned the tire. Yeah, we burned the tires off his mom's car, and then we would go steal tires. It was bad. We were kids.
Now you're not a big collector. I know that you don't have issues.
I don't collect anything.
Yeah, I kind of am the opposite. This thing right here, this is the trunk emblem. 1973, the Pontiac Grand Am could be had with the 400 or the 455. And about 1977, we had a little gas station in town where every Saturday and Sunday morning, the drunk drivers from the night before, their wrecked cars would be towed in there. We'd ride up and check them out. There was a black Grand Am with this on the trunk. I snatched it. The car was bent around a pole. Guy probably died. I don't know. But I remember I've had this ever since. But I remember 7.4 liters. I wasn't too high on the Littree thing, the metric thing, which was a big stink. But that's the 455. That was such a rare car today. That sunroof, black car, plastic honeycomb wheels. Where is it now? It was just a junk used car back then. Some kid got for probably $800 because it got 12 miles to the gallon. He hit a tree with it, and maybe he lived. I don't know. But this is all that's left of it. That's all that's left. That thing right there.
There's a guy here in my town that he's been listing Pontiacs on Facebook Marketplace for a couple of months now, right? This guy evidently has probably 50 to 100 60s and 70s Pontiacs, and he's been listing them, a few of them at a time. Cheap prices.
Are they rusty or pretty decent?
Most of them are rusty.
You're in Tennessee, so they're good.
Yeah, well, most of them are rusty, like sitting with the windows down and the trunk lid open, and so they're rusty like that.
Okay.
And he's got a couple of Can-Ams. Oh, not Can-Ams.
Grand Am.
The Grand-Ams with 4 speeds.
Wow.
He's got several GTOs.
Yeah.
The 73 GTOs. Yeah. And then he's got a couple of, and he keeps advertising these things. He won't let me near them. I made the mistake by saying, hey, I do YouTube, and I'd love to do a walk around here thinking of you, right? I'm gonna play Steve Maggs, right?
Hey, give him a voice. I'll watch.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but he won't let me near anything. He doesn't want the exposure. Yeah. I don't think when you try to sell these freaking cars, I'll help you sell every single thing you got, but he won't.
Yeah. The holy grail. The 4-door, 4-speed Grand Am 455 or 400. That is the holy grail. They made some. The Grand Am was cool because it had that dual NACA hood, the rubber nose, and you could have it as a 4-door, which was truly something GTO never offered. So it was a special car. Only I think 1 year. The Grand Am lived on as a downsize, whatever. But the 73 was a special car. That big nose. Remember, I think it was Mickey Thompson had the candy. It was a yellow. Remember that funny car? How cool was that?
Yeah, Del Poldy ran that thing.
Yeah. It was. Peter Paul, the Candies or something. Peter, whatever.
No, that was the Pinto.
Well, there was that too. Yeah, he was sponsored by Candy. Or yeah.
Who sponsored the? Oh, it was Revell.
Yeah, there was. Yes, that's right. And there was a model kit of that.
The Revell leader.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That was the Grand Am.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, it's speaking of things being lost forever. If you ever, on my channel about 5 weeks ago, we did a series of 8 videos on the Olds Red Barn. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a guy who was in the Korean War. He's now deceased, but his son has this stuff. It was a big New England barn made in 1910, packed full of Oldsmobile parts, including a 57 Super 88 convertible with a tri-power J2 and a 3-speed manual.
Oh, I saw that.
And the thing we did, I said, hey, everything here is for sale. Talk to MikeDees.com. And he was in the process of talking to somebody to sell that for 30 grand. Well, that is the barn now. A lightning strike about 4. This camera sucks. But anyway, it burned. It's all gone.
The car is gone?
Yeah. And the crazy part of it is, everything was lost. He was at work, and it was the same day there was a church in Spencer, Mass. that was ancient, made national headlines when it burned down. That very same day, the Olds Red Barn burned down. Didn't get any headlines, but his wife's in the house, said the ground shook, but she kept doing her thing in the house. And she said, suddenly in the driveway, all these cars are driving in. She goes, what? Your barn's on fire. So she runs out there, and it's roaring. So everything that was in there is now gone. So we'll go in there. And yes, he said, you can come back and make videos. And he also said to me, Steve, can I get a copy of those videos? He says, you bet. For insurance company. Yeah. The insurance company was trying to screw him, but we documented all the stuff. So he's covered. But yeah, like
shame.
Yeah, horrible. And the pick of the litter was it was a 57 Super 88 convertible, J2, 3-speed NASCAR close ratio, column shifted tranny. His father bought new because of Richard Petty winning in his number 42 J2 car. Remember and it was a rust-free car. It was in the process of being restored. It was last driven in 74, but gone. Yeah.
The Marines. Thompson, Mickey Thompson. So.
Oh, Marines,
Prudhomme, right after the Revell sponsorship.
Yeah.
Prudhomme had Army.
Yeah.
McEwen had the Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah. Army, Navy. Yeah. The recruiters.
The Navy. Right. Who had the Air Force? But yeah, Mickey Thompson.
Maybe Garlits or something like that. I think Garlits, right? Didn't he had Navy? But yeah. Anyway, yeah. But that was
Navy sponsored a few different cars. Yeah. But yeah,
it's true in the immediate Vietnam era. I'm sure those branches needed all the PR they could get. You know what I mean?
Well, that was 73. That was 1973.
Yeah. But sponsorship. But another close call I had is I have a thing, the Wilshire Shaker Nova, and you might, was it Hot Rod? Is this thing? I did a book on funny cars. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was built as a streetable match racer. Initially I wanted to do a Mopar, but I was working for Hot Rod Roses. You got to do a Chevy, Steve. Okay, because you can get not parts for free, but frankly, when you work for Hot Rod, you could call Gary Penn at Chevy High Performance and say, hey, Gary, we're doing it. And he goes, what do you need? What do we ship it?
Right.
Well, let me tell you what it is. But they would send you an engine, which was wonderful. It was awesome. But anyway, but the car had a tendency to do this. It ran great, and it was a street car. It totally could be driven anywhere, but it would also do a nice wheelie. You had to be sure to have your button. I had a torque flight in an art car, full manual torque flight, and with a wheel cap adapter between the rat motor, and because that's what they had. I had a Chrysler Hemi seat, super stock battery, super stock leaves in the back. And it's funny, Larry Shepard at Mopar Performance didn't want to donate any parts to the car because, well, it's a Chevy. I couldn't believe it, because we're paying tribute to the idea that Chrysler springs and seats were used in, like Richard Schroeder had a Nova, a lot of Novas. They had A990 champagne seats in them. Who knows why? But I had that stuff. I put it in there. Well, anyway, the car had a tendency sometimes to come down kind of hard. And on one of those passes at Lebanon Valley, here is the leaf spring right here, right? But if we look at the end of it, what's up?
Oh, sweet.
Okay. I make I do the burnout, and I came down kind of hard. I'm thinking, well, that kind of sucked. So I'm pulling in the lights, and it just felt greasy and weird, But anyway, go fever. Let's rip it, Yellow. Here we go. Up it comes, and I push second, came down nice. It just felt strange. Stay in it. 11:20. It wasn't an animal, but it went well. At the end of the track, I hit the brakes. Just felt strange, and then the motor shut off. That was the steering arm coming into contact with the trigger on the harmonic balancer for the ignition and killing the engine because the front axle was wagging under the car because the shackles had broken. And I made a pass in that condition. And it was I saved all the parts, but both springs did this right here. They fractured at the eye when it came down.
That's
I
crazy.
never had that happen. But speaking of close calls, that could have been a bad day at the track. But
That would have been a.
in fact, if you go to my every day, my videos end with sort of a closing montage. You'll see
The car, yeah.
that's the pass. If you study the front axle, you'll see it. The wheelbase moves because the axle's floating. The only thing that kept it from coming down was the braided brake lines. I ordinarily hate that stuff, but they kept the axle hanging and it didn't come down. It would have just swung right down and the steering would have been a mess. I would have come down and gone into the guardrail, at 50 or 60, just having launched, but that would have sucked. But so, yeah, another close call, but the car lived on. I got more springs for it. And, it was a fun little car, but yeah.
Those surprises at the finish line are always interesting.
Yeah. And the thing that shut it down, I turned the wheel. And again, the steering crossarm was very close to the spinning trigger wheel for the Electromotive EFI, and the ignition, all of it ran off this little trigger wheel with the spots, the thing. And it rubbed on that. And then it just broke contact and shut itself off. So I coasted down, but, pushed it on the trailer, got it home, bought new springs. But I did call the manufacturer. I won't say their name, but I guess it was a heat treat issue where the spring steel was, who knows, but it came down hard one time and boy, it broke the eyes. I've never seen that happen on a spring, but it happened to me.
I had a friend of mine who had a two chassis Daytona that I lent him a motor for, right? So he had run the car a couple of times and I went with him. I didn't usually go with him. I just, here's a motor, have fun, right? Bring it back when you're done. But I went with him this one time and he's like, the car feels weird. What's it doing? He says, it's kind of like pulling a little bit and then it's like holding back a little bit. And we're looking over the car and it never occurred to me to look at the front brakes or anything. So he says, take a run with the car. And I said, I don't want to drive the car, man. He says, no, go ahead. You can drive this thing. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. So I said, fine, I'll make a run. So I do the burnout. I stage the car. I leave. And I'm going up to the gears, and the car feels right. Maybe it's pulling a little bit. I'm like, maybe tire pressure. I'm thinking to myself, it was just like a clean, easy pass, right? I get into high gear. Here comes a stripe. I'm like, well, I don't really know this car. I should probably start getting it slowed down. And I had never been to that track before, so I didn't know what the shut
off is. Yeah.
So I'm coming up. Here comes the scoreboard. I go for the brake, and the car goes wham! Like this. Just ripped the wheel out of my hand. It got sideways. One of the front calipers had been dragging.
Wow.
And as soon as I stepped on the brake, the other side grabbed and it just ripped the wheel out of my hand. And I'm looking at guardrail.
Did you reel it back in or did you spin it? Or
I wish I could say that, yes, I saved it. I was just along for the ride. I was about to close my eyes because, you're going to dance with Mr. Guardrail. Don't watch, right? And I was just about to close my eyes. And then the car started to come back around again like this. Didn't spin it or anything like that. It looked like saving a century, but it was just pure dumb luck. Yeah. And the car, I got the thing stopped.
Yeah, cars do weird things at the top end, and there's rarely anybody down there to see it. It's a little different, but at Hot Rod, remember the NMCA drag racing series, World's Fastest Street Cars. It was a thing that Peterson for 10 seconds owned, and John Diana, I think, wanted to take on the NHRA for a few seconds. So it was streetcar drag racing. Tony Christian, all the Chicago street racers. But I remember in many cases at the top of the track, you just get down there. Almost every car does a little something weird for you, and most of the time it was 5-liter Mustangs with the hood, the fiberglass hood, doing this weird thing like that in many cases the driver wasn't even aware of. And you slow it down and it's gone. But this weird cars become lousy airplanes at 150. You know what I mean? And like 5.0s had this thing. They're sitting like that. They're just the tires are little tiny Bogarts with skinny tires. They're barely on the track. But it's funny how at the top end is where a lot of weird stuff happens when nobody sees it because they're down there.
Well, if you remember, so before they started getting really swoopy with the funny cars, like pre Don Schumacher's car, pre the Wonder Wagon, when there was still basically regular proportion cars. The pictures of those things and the lights, the distortions and the roofs coming in like this and just everything all buff. And if you watch the car go, and I'm sure if you're driving the car, you're not aware of these things.
Right.
But when you're watching the pictures from the outside, the fucking air is doing all kinds of crazy things.
I know every once in a while that it's reported the bodywork catches the hat and you're wide open And or that's happened a few times. I forget who it was, but Cheryl Greer or something like that just comes down and holds, going for a ride.
I was tuning Frank Jonkman's car, and he had a funny car called the Nitro Mare. It was a Mustang. So it was a nostalgia funny car.
Cool.
The Nitro Mare.
Cool.
So I was tuning that thing, and this was at, I forget which race it was, but we had top speed and low ET of the meet, but on that run the body caught the injector. So he went, he hung the laundry. You hang the laundry first, then you pull your foot out of it, but there was no pulling his foot out of it. And before he can get the fuel shut off, he was off the end of the track. This was at Englishtown. It was at Englishtown, and he ended up in the sand trap out there, tore the car all up.
Did the motor puke and did it go sky
No,
high?
the motor was fine.
Wow, that's probably 1,000 RPM, right?
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah.
It hung in there, but the rest of the car didn't. I have a lot of wreckage in my. There's been a lot of wreckage.
Yeah. Another thing is, way back when, in fact, when in the mid 80s, I would go to the Ware newsstand and get the latest issue of this, no kidding, which would fuel my nights street racing. Now, when I say street racing, I'm not talking about Tokyo Drift or dumb crap. Between the towns of West Warren and Palmer, Massachusetts, on Route 67 was a 4-lane road where you could do dangerous things safely. There was nothing going on. So I had a 64 Dodge Polara, this thing here, that I put together like a 440 for it. It was a clean little car, and here it is, just a regular, I'm so back through this thing, but up at Lebanon Valley, here we go. But it was a 64 Polar. I put a 440 together for it. Well, on the first night I had it, I bought a set of 6-pack rods from Mancini Racing. And, I'm thinking I'm on a budget. I didn't have an X-ray. I'm thinking 6-pack rods. That's what you want. Now we know better because they're big and they're heavy and all that kind of stuff. But I went down to the Ware dump, and I had my buddy in the car with me, and it's a rainy night. So what? He goes, don't shut it off. This was the 446-pack rod. That's a LF2335F.
I know the piston well, yeah.
And it broke the block, and this is still, that's stuck.
That's stuck.
This thing, and here it is right here when it just happened. This is way back. This occurred back in 1989, but and I still have it. I keep everything. Here it is right there, and there it is. So I called Mancini. I wasn't shaking my fist. I'm the idiot who didn't get the parts Magnaflux. So they said, we'll send you another rod. They sent me 8, and I sent the 7 back because I'm that kind of a guy. So I had it sleeved, but it put a dent in my summer. I was broke. I didn't need money to fix a block. So I took the block to Springfield Crank to put a sleeve in it, put it back together again, and it was okay after that. But, just the broken stuff. There was no damage. Well, there was damage to my wallet, but my buddy Kowalski says, don't shut it off. So we actually drove it about 4 miles going bang, 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 bang. I just, because it was raining, he didn't want to walk. Me neither. But so it was my brand new engine, just broken in. I'm doing a little, and I didn't wing it. It was probably $5,000. Maybe might have been one of those toss loads they call about. There was no load. The car was in first, second, and then okay, don't shut it off. But yeah, the things that happen, and you keep going, I guess. I don't know.
So there's my piston.
Yo. Oh.
See, I don't save anything, right? I know you save literally everything. I save nothing. Except this was a reminder of don't go top fuel racing anymore. So I was partners with Bobby, who's Lagana, right? On the top fuel car.
Yeah.
This is in 97 and 98. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
So I was junior partners with him. So meaning that the operation was, he had less say over what happened. Okay. Please. It was just a bad deal. It was just a bad deal. But I was partners nonetheless, and we were actually making money with the car. It was a profitable thing because we were running match races with it. There was a demand for match racing. Like anytime the tracks would bring in like Shirley Muldowney, they needed somebody to put the over lane, and they pay us okay, right? So
yeah, funny cars under the stars. Tuesday night, $20 a head. Track hit some bucks. They spread it around, and sure. Yeah.
So we and there weren't many top fuelers match racing back then. Right. We were all focused on doing national events. So we would run national events and we would play the first round loser card, right? Because the way it works is you qualify, you get your first round loser money, $6,500, $7,000, depending on the race runner. But if you go to the second round, it doesn't pay because now I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy.
Yeah.
If you win the first round, all right, I should say, if you make it to the first round,
You got to earn it again.
your 6,500 paid for all of your expenses to get to the track. It paid for all of the fuel, oil, clutches, spark plugs, everything that you went through for qualifying, and you end up with like a $600 profit, like a $500 profit, like that. So you're ahead of the game. Now, if you win second round, but win the first round, but don't win second round, it ends up that you either break even or lose money because there isn't enough of a pay difference between first and second round to cover the $1,000 a run it's going to cost you to run the car. All right. So, but that's besides the point. We had figured it out ways to make money with this car. So it wasn't cost us anything to run it. And we were running a lot of hand-me-down parts. Austin Coil. So Bobby's niece, Lisa, she was a Miss English Leather calendar girl. Married Austin Coil.
Okay.
So we had the family connection. So Austin would bring over milk crates full of connecting rods and pistons and bearings and all kinds of other stuff and say, here, if you can use it, do it. So it was all stuff that had been cycled out of Force's car.
Sure.
And that kept, actually, this piston probably started out in Force's car.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll tell you, I got to shorten the story because it's a really long story, but I'll shorten it up for you, right? So we run the car at a match race, may have been in New Jersey. I don't remember. All right, because this part of it is kind of important, right? So make the first run, we get paid. Okay, we're going to make the second run. Car leaves the start line, goes out about 50 feet, 75 feet, and it snaps the input shaft, right? Okay, so the motor goes high C, just rang, right? Pushes every gasket out of the engine, right? Covers everything with oil, but it's still running. Okay, the engine is still running. So Bobby gets the car stopped, right? But the car's running. Now the oil that's all over it is on fire. He can't get it shut off. It won't shut off. So now he's got it up against the fence, right? Or up against the guardrail. Brings the front of the car against the guardrail. And now the engine's just sitting there running. And it's pumping oil out.
So no way to take it out of gear?
No, it's wouldn't shut off. Wow. So, and the thing is just sitting there running, right? On fire. And the track crew now, they're looking at this thing. It's like, what do you do, right? So I grabbed the fire extinguisher and I ran over to the car and I shoved the extinguisher into the injector and pulled the trigger, and that killed.
Did a hydraulic hit? Did it?
It just shut it down. It just fills everything. It just
It didn't seize. It didn't fill up a cylinder and bend a rod.
Well, all right. So when it snapped the input shaft, it was under load. So the motor went to unspeakable RPM. Whatever, because this thing's like well tight and bang like that. So it just sings, okay? But it didn't unscrew itself. Just pushed every gasket out of the engine, right? All right. So bring the thing back to the pits, and all of the wiring on it is burned. Everything is burned, okay? And now we had a match race at Milan, Michigan, the following Saturday, right? So I tell Bobby, I says, listen, I'm out of stuff. I'm out of parts. I'm out of money. You got to call Martin and tell them that Milan and tell them we can't make it next weekend. It's just not going to happen.
And that was guaranteed like $5,000 to show, or what was?
Yeah, it was a decent amount. I don't remember how much, but it was a decent amount. But I told Martin, so we're at this track where we're discussing this over smoldering engine, okay? And I'm like, everything here is junk. There's nothing in this engine we can reuse, right? I says it went to high C. The connecting rods are case hardened. We can't do anything with this.
Yeah, it's all suspect. It's all suspect, even if it looks good. Yeah.
So I told him, call Milan, right? Cancel for next week, and I'll start hustling up money. I'll do whatever I got to do, and we'll come up with some parts for the next race, right? So now I go back to New York. I never traveled with the car. I would travel independently of the car. Because I'm like that. I'm claustrophobic. I don't want to sit in the car with other people. So I stay with other people. So I like to just travel myself. I come and I go myself. So he says, I'm going to go home. So now a week goes by, and I don't talk to Bob because we don't really have anything to talk about. I'm busy trying to come up with money and parts and everything else to get this car back out again. So the following Saturday morning, it's like sunrise, okay? My phone rings. It's Bobby. Where are you? I says, what do you mean, where am I? He says, where are you? We're here. We just got here. Where are you
staying? Milan?
In Milan, right? I says, I'm home, Bobby. I'm home. You just called me. I'm at home. He's like, oh, why are you there? Why aren't you here? I says, because we don't have a car to race. He says, I put it all back together again. It's great, right? I says, no, you could not have put it back together again. It's not great. I says, we can't run these parts. He said, well, I'm here and we're going to run it. He says, you better get here. Milan is normal driving is a 10-hour ride, right?
Yeah.
I made it in like 8 hours.
Wow.
I get there just as they're about to warm the car up, okay? And I'm like, ugh. So we start the car. It's sitting there. It's idling. It sounds okay. Make a couple of small adjustments. It's all right, right? And I'm like, but I'm saying to myself, no, this is just a bad scene. This is going to be a bad scene, okay? And I'm keeping to myself. I'm not talking to Bobby. I'm kind of pissed off now. Right?
Think positive. Think positive. Yeah.
I can't think positive because I know what's going to happen. So we get called out, okay? We're the first pair of cars down the track. All right. So start the car. He does the burnout. I'm covering my ears. I'm squinting my eyes because I think this is going to come unglued on the burnout. It makes it through the burnout. And it sounds okay coming back. And I'm saying to myself, you know what? I'm a freaking asshole. I should have just listened to Bobby. He's got the experience. He's been around the block. He knows what he's talking about, right? I need to learn from Bobby. I have to learn. Okay. And this is what I'm saying as the car is backing up, right? So he gets up on the start line. I walk around. I put him into the beams, stop him. I walk around. I'm standing about 10 feet off the back of the car, just off to the side.
Right.
Light turns green. He gets at about 50 feet. It was the biggest explosion I have ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. Everything from the oil pan to the hat disintegrated. It just, like I can't begin. There was this blinding mushroom cloud, this deafening explosion, and I'm standing there, and it's all happening in slow motion. Okay, and I'm feeling the heat from this thing, like I'm on fire. Okay, like this is how crazy this was, and I'm watching this, and now parts start raining down. Okay, and I feel something on my foot. Something hits my foot, and I looked down at my foot. And this is sitting there.
Oh, nice piece of piston. This
is sitting there, right? It's sitting on the top of my foot.
Is that ring stuck into the side of it? Is that ring still in it?
Yeah.
It's fused in there. My God.
Yeah. Wow. This was one of the biggest intact identifiable parts of the engine. Okay. So with that, this thing's blazing hot, right? And I picked it up. I put it in my pocket, right? I says, scumbag. And I turned around and I walked back to my car and I left. And that was my souvenir. Wow. That taught me.
Yeah. Oof.
That taught me my lesson.
Yeah. So did he give it up, or did he have a spare motor in New York, or was that the end, or how does that?
No. We regrouped as usual.
You stopped doing it. I think that's the one you hit your head.
No, we regrouped. A lot of borrowed parts, a lot of borrowed money, I still owe people money from oh, please, you have no idea, right? So we regrouped and started out for the next season and had a very ugly crash with Bobby Jr. driving the car. Yeah. And that was it. I was done at that point. I got to stop.
Did he walk away, or was he okay?
Life slided away. He lost several fingers. I actually had to go through the wreckage and find his you couldn't even find whole fingers. All I could find was pieces of bone and pieces of meat.
Jeez.
So, but we gathered all of that up and put in a rag, and they life flighted him. They ended up taking one of his toes, his big toes. They grafted that on for a thumb, and I think they were able to because what happened was. The car got out about 300 or 400 feet. The chassis broke. So the chassis broke between the cockpit and the engine. So when it went like this, all of the lines are okay. So the fuel shut off, the parachute, the throttle cable, all of that is run through the frame rails.
Oh, yeah.
So when it pinched off all the lines.
Yeah.
So he couldn't. There was nothing you could do at this point. Couldn't let off the throttle, couldn't shut off the fuel, couldn't hang the chutes, couldn't hit the brakes, nothing.
Could steer. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah.
He could steer like do. So he ended up going off the end of the track at God only knows what mile an hour. The car was in the woods, probably a good 300 feet.
Wow.
And disintegrated. But if you believe in a higher power, I don't know. But if there is such a thing, he was at work that day, because when the car went through the end of the property, there was a chain link fence that ran around the outside of the property. The car hit the first set of trees and whatnot and broke all up. So now you had the cockpit, okay? So it broke right at the footbox and right at the engine, right? So it was just the container with him in it. That got caught in the chain link fence, and the chain link fence acted as a parachute, more or less.
Okay, so it decelerated him and kept him from going further.
The way I found the car, because, okay, so this is all happening, so now we're on the starting line, okay? And the way we found the car, so when it happened, everything disappeared in smoke, okay? Everything disappeared in smoke. Because once the car broke like this, the wind wasn't pushing down in the back anymore, but the motor was still putting out power. So it spun the tires, and it spun the tires, right? So it's just a fog bank. And we're driving out to find the car and can't find the car. We're looking everywhere. Where's the fucking car? And the other car is now, they're packing it up, they're putting the chutes on the back, and they start, and like, hey, have you seen our car? And they're like, no, right? And we're looking everywhere. How do you lose a top fuel dragster? Okay, how do you lose a top fuel dragster? We get to the end of the property, and I saw the fence posts all broken out. And I found the car by running along the fence, because it had actually dragged the fence a few hundred feet into the woods.
Was he
crunching? The car.
Was it like, come over here, come over here? No, was he? I mean, was he like, you know?
Well, I rolled the car like the fence caught the car, but it didn't really wrap around it, right? Okay. So I was able to, I rolled the cockpit back over again, and by that time he was like conscious, like he had just taken a severe hit, right? Yeah. And he had broken his ankle, and like I said, these fingers got guillotined off because he was pulling on the brake, okay, and the fire bottle lever. When the impact happened, the fire bottle lever came and just guillotined the fingers off. So, and he life flighted him out of there. And we cleaned up the wreckage. We got everything loaded up on the trailer, and then he says, "I'm finished. I'm done. I've had enough." And that was it. I left drag racing cold turkey at that point. I went back to the house. I burned. I threw away my little black book. Everybody's got their little black book. That was gone. I had notebooks of tuning and specifications, and I threw all of that stuff away. I stopped answering my phone, and I just went completely cold turkey. And that was me. That was the end of me and drag racing.
Yeah. Now I know there's no insurance for a thing like that. Was that destructive? I mean, his life he's probably still in debt from that, right? I mean, how does it even play out?
Oh, I don't even know. I'm sure it was an IHRA event, and I'm sure that the IHRA had an insurance policy and everything else. He was okay. I mean, he's fine now. He's been driving top fuel cars ever since. This is Bobby Jr. Oh, did I?
Yeah, you were gone for about 15 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's still out there. They're still racing.
Yeah, wow.
But like I said, that was it. I was just, at that point, I had been through enough. I had seen enough, and I was like, I got to stop before somebody gets killed, because we're always running with these low buck guys, always running on a budget, always. And I was like, just no, done.
Yeah, similar, but not the same by any stretch. But my old Dart, we'd a thing called Hot Rod Magazine TV. And we would sometimes say, yeah, I'll put my car in for that. And this is the Dart on a dyno. This is at Joe Gill's place right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at Royal Purple, they said, hey, why don't we need a staffer's car to test the difference between mineral-based crankcase, transmission, and differential oil? Well, I'll donate my car. So I drove my Hemi Dart out to Ontario, California, or thereabouts where Royal Purple's at. On the very first pass, with the cameras rolling, with mineral oil, before we changed to the Royal Purple synthetic to see the horsepower reduction from the all that kind of stuff. It just shut down. And that's when I realized that you don't want to use a timing set when the rollers aren't one piece, that have a seam in them. You don't put that in a car with triple valve springs. So the result of this whole thing was, this is once a Manley Hemi valve. And I saved all the bent pieces, but these once went, like that in my Hemi. And they stopped doing that on that moment. And there's no insurance for that either. But I remember all these little pieces, and the guy just kind of, here's the beautiful Hemi. And I just started thinking, wow, I guess I'm walking home today. So yeah, and we didn't finish the video. We used a guy's Corvette that was there or something like that. But so what I then had was a broken Hemi in my kitchen in my home in El Monte, which about 3 years later, Carcraft said, hey, I'll tell you what, if you want to build your engine, we'll rebuild it. And so we did it again. But sometimes when stuff breaks, it puts you out of business for a while, if you're like me anyway. And that wasn't even a dangerous thing. But I got to say, if you look at the teeth on this thing, they're very pointy.
Yeah.
And that is the cumulative effect of a shitty roller chain slowly pointing these things. And it's a good 3-bolt gear, but the chain itself, there was all kinds of parts, a whole bag, I got it here somewhere, but a whole bag of chain in the oil pan just everywhere down there. And yeah, it broke the block, had to sleeve 2 holes, and the heads lived, luckily, but I saved all this junk as a reminder to either not do it again or not do it again. I'm not sure, but yeah, so anyway, that's why I do this now. I build model cars. You know what I mean?
It's a lot, bro. It's a lot safer.
They're cheaper.
Yeah, a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Although I have to say this. In the world of model cars, did you ever build? This is the Johann Holland Hearse. This is like a $600 model now, or maybe $500. But Johann was John Hanley, and he was a guy who made plastic parts for Detroit automakers. And in 1947, started making promos, little plastic toy cars. He said the little ones sell the big ones, and Chrysler used him and stuff. But the thing of it is, the Holland Hearse is kind of it's got 2 Hemi motors. It's a great kit. I mean, all kinds of good pieces.
I've never seen that. I was a model car fiend when I was a kid, and I've never seen that.
Yeah, Johann was kind of like a different thing, but the big one, the flat box is the money. These are really hard to find, and these are also pretty uncommon, but these are great because you get 2 Hilborn injection setups on these things here. I used to buy these kits just to grab the Hilborn to put them in kits like that, So anyway, but yeah, model cars are a little cheaper, even though they can be expensive. In fact, I still have the first model car I ever built as a kid. It was a Chevy Monte Carlo, and the Motor City series was kind of like simplified. It was like a promo. The first real model I ever bought was Mark Donahue's, this thing right here, the Javelin. Yeah, and the box art when I was a kid just made me drool. Just look at the pictures on that. And then of course another classic. I've had this thing since I was a kid. Jungle Jim's flip top car with the flames and stuff.
I built like 10 different versions of that.
Yeah, and then Butch Leo, California Clash, another Flash, and just another great model. But I remember seeing the word Hemi on these things and thinking, what's a Hemi? And then finally I saw a 71 Charger Super B, and I saw a 426 Hemi on the hood. I said, that's what a Hemi is. So anyway, but a lot of these things I've picked up on eBay and stuff. And while they're cheaper than, like here, this is the Recharge. This, when I was a kid, I used to buy the heck out of these things. And I love the race Hemi, the Max Wedge, and and the funny thing is with this, the original issue of that said Ram charges on it. But when the license expired, Johann, being as efficient as he is, was, well, let's go recharged and keep it. So it's one of those workarounds, like Gene Snow's Snowman became Eugene White, you know what I mean? To work around, get the lawyers confused. But yeah, so model cars, I prefer them to the real thing, and they're just as interesting, I guess, if you do them right. But anyway,
I have a couple of model kits but I don't have the inclination.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's prices of them. So I remember when I was like 9 years old, right? And I would wash neighbors' cars and mow lawns and clean pools and stuff like that. And I would take the money and go buy magazines and models. And the models were like, this is like 1972, 1970, 71, 72. And the magazines were 50 cents and the models were like $1.25, $1.50.
Yeah.
And they were everywhere. Like the candy stores, they don't have candy stores anymore, right? Newsstands and candy stores always had piles of models. Yeah. It was this huge thing, back then. And now it's like it's non-existent. But I went to Hobby Lobby to look for something a couple of weeks ago, and they had a couple of car models. I don't remember what they were, but they were like re-releases of the ones that we did when we were kids.
Yeah.
$30 fucking dollars, Steve.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing about models is, initially they were sold to kids between 8 and 15. We're talking 1958 through 73. You know what I mean? And then the video game thing kind of squashed them. Pac-Man arcades. Kids were spending their quarters on Pac-Man in 75, not models. And of course, the boring 70s we talked about. Suddenly, a model of a Gremlin was not like a model of an AMX, and kids stopped buying kits. But it's funny nowadays. I mean, there's a thing called Round Two. Tom Lowe, his dad apparently invented clumping kitty litter and left his kids money to start things. So Tom Lowe did Round Two, did Johnny Lightning and Racing Champions, and now he's turned his attention to reviving old plastic model kits. But it is true, $30 may seem like a lot of money, but I think instead, I think $225 is what I used to buy them at. Well, like if you look at most kits, you see this right here. The part number says 225. That was code for $2.25.
Yeah.
I think this is backwards, so I'm getting all dyslexified. But 225, and so that was, and like with this one here, the Holland Hearst. I don't think there's a price on it, but yeah, back when this was meant to sell for $2, you can see right there, 200. So I think in then money, if a Coke was 10 cents, $2 was probably, $30 is a lot of money, and half the time that's licensing. If it says Dodge or Chevy, there's a thing on the bottom, a hologram that says a license has been paid to General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, Coca-Cola, M&M's, whatever it is. So that's a chunk of it. Sometimes $5, but still.
Okay, well, still, if you think about it, right? Let's say it was $2 when the average person was making $3.50 an hour.
Yeah, true.
So you had to work 45 minutes to buy that model, right? But now if the average person is making $20 an hour, you got to work an hour and a half to buy. So,
yeah. Well, the crazy thing, there's a thing the sociologists, I don't know what that means, but rejuveniles, in other words, that's adult kids, and that's us, people between 30 and 130. And between 30 and 130, they happily pay $30-$40. And it's funny, there's efforts afoot to potentially clone kits like this. So instead of paying $435 on eBay, which I really did, because why not? These may be being cloned. What they can do now is you have to have a mint kit, scan the trees with the parts, take that data, and then cut tooling, steel, and then with that tooling you squirt plastic. 3D printing on these, not the answer, because it takes a week to grow the kit, but the idea is that, see, the tooling on these things was scrapped because apparently the word is that John Hanley would sometimes leave the office. There was, toward the end, apparently there was people weren't getting paid, so they sold the tooling out the back door. So the tooling for those models is gone. It'll never be back. Whereas Round Two, Tom Lowe, he's able to get the tooling, which never got scrapped, and kind of spiff it up and make plastic again. But the word is now, thanks to not 3D printing, but scanning and that sort of thing, that they can actually take a mint old kit and just basically take a digital picture of all the trees, like these things here, take the trees and basically then cut tooling from this and start squirting plastic. So because these are so expensive, I'm sure that Tom Lowe and people are starting to think about cloning Johan. And the beauty is that the trademark has fallen into basically a void.
Public domain.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So 30 to 130 is the sweet spot for models. So $30 ain't too bad compared to what? 900 for something, so pick your poison. I do love the Hemi valves. Look how thin they are. You know what I mean? The stem is not
the intake
small, and it's hard to think. This thing, I used to have a 6,800 RPM chip in my MSD 6L, and these things go 6,800 RPM. But the chain, and the lesson there, of course, is if you ever buy a roller set, make sure that the rollers themselves are solid pieces of metal and not a formed thing with a seam.
See, I learned all of my lessons 20 years ago. Okay. So like the thing is now I refuse to do anything exotic.
Yeah.
Because exactly that, right? So I found that I can have just as much fun playing with stuff that's just cheap, common, right? Without the liability. So, I just wasted $27,000 worth of, right?
Yeah. Like twin turbos. And I get it. That stuff's cool, but
so now it's like, I play with stuff that like, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, blow it the fuck up. I got 3 more sitting right over there and I can go get 4 more over there for pocket change. So that's why I won't do anything exotic. No Hemis, no blowers, nothing. If I can't send it and flush it down the toilet, I don't want to deal with it.
I know what you mean. It's, I left Hot Rod Magazine on January 20th, 2004, just as the Gen 3 Hemi was starting to percolate. The Challenger was still 4 years away, but there was rumors of this 5.7 Hemi Magnum thing. The LS engine was in its full power by then, and the Ford cameras and stuff. But I never did get into, because turbos and all that kind of stuff was just kind of getting started. And I won't say I'm glad I punched out when I did, but what I'll say is, when you leave Hot Rod or the magazine business, you kind of unplug to a degree of the cutting edge stuff. Like at Hot Rod, you see the coolest stuff right away. Coatings were a big deal, cryo, freezing, that kind. They were writing about that stuff. And, even like thin metric rings were a big stink, and, all this kind of great stuff. But now there's just a universe of power adders and stuff I know nothing about. And I don't really have any interest in putting a couple turbos on an LS and blowing the gaskets out of me 5 inches. But then again, I teach, somebody's going to do it, and I'm glad they are, But it's funny, you see enough after a while, and, I don't know, I'm a spectator at this point.
Those older magazines are Carcraft magazine from where they started calling it Drag Racing's Complete Magazine. So you go back to like when Terry Cook was the editor, right? 68, 67, 68, right up to like the John Asher years, and Steve Collison was there. Oh, the tech that was in that magazine, the stuff, you could go back through those. Now, you're talking about literally magazines that are 50 years old, okay? And you could find every single thing that's a trend today that they're making power with today, or what's new today. They were talking about in those magazines in that period of time.
The Malakote brothers with their twin turbo 64 Willis, I mean, it is interesting, but and power adders are cool, and it's a whole new world in a lot of ways. But it's true, the raw material now, the LS, the Gen 3 Hemi, these things are, a pickup truck engine makes 400 horsepower, and the small block.
Have you ever played with nitrous?
Oh, yeah, I play with nitrous. Oh, yeah.
I'm new to it. This is my first experience with nitrous. Well, no, I had one previous experience years and years ago, but this is the first car that I'm screwing around with nitrous, bottle rocket. And bro, I'm addicted. This stuff is awesome.
It is good. As you know, the only downside is make sure you have a bunch of bottles. When I was
I've been buying bottles like crazy.
Yeah.
I never want to run out.
Yeah. My final little bit of horror. When I was at Hot Rod, Ro McGonigal had a really open mind, and thankfully he allowed me to put slant 6 engines in the magazine. This is Doug Dutra's book on how to build slant 6, but this is an aluminum block slant 6 hyperpack that I put together and used the picture. That's all good. That motor wound up in this Duster right here. See the Hot Rod logo on the front, and basically it was a 4-speed. It was born a 3-speed, but there it is there, and you can kind of see the hyperpack air cleaner off to the side. But we had a bottle in the back, and this piston was along for the ride at one point. Yeah. So, but then again, bad on me for using cast eggy $7 pistons.
Let me guess. That was number 6.
Wait, was that?
That was number 6, right?
I don't have I think it was 5. Oh yeah, I'm not sure. But I had a plate underneath the a small Demon 4-barrel. And then it was at Carlsbad. I remember, and I saw oil starting to mist on the windshield. Like, it was coming right through. It's still running, but it's towards that right there. And but nitrous was good. But again, a supplemental fuel system. Make sure you turn it on always. And
what did you run with it?
What's that?
What did it run?
It ran 13 9s with at Carlsbad, sea level air. Not too shabby. The Duster. It was very light. And
what kind of shot were you running?
100 horse.
Okay.
100 horsepower. Yeah, on top of solid cams. Was eggy, not eggy with this. I forget who made the cam for the thing, but we did it for TV, and I wanted to die when it blew up on camera. But that car eventually became a lightweight thing. I put a 360 crate in and stuff, and with just bolt-on plastic parts and stuff, and everything was light as it could be, I got the car down to 2,424 pounds with plastic springs, and it was stupid, but the unibody wasn't sliced or cut in any way. So the A bodies are wonderful little machines for and that was when it was a $600 car. I remember buying Dusters in LA for $600 back in 1998, 9, and anyway, but yeah, modern stuff. I have a 4.6 camera in my Fairmont, and I have not messed with it inside, but the chains, the 4 cams, and it's naturally aspirated. But it's a brave new world with twin turboing and just all the crazy stuff that can be done. But nitrous is a cool thing. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I just discovered it, and I love it. And
Yeah,
I'm going to do a lot with it. Turbocharging. I mean, I've played with turbocharged cars in the past. God knows I play with supercharged cars, right? But there's just something about nitrous. I can't put my finger on it, like what the appeal is.
yeah,
Other than besides the actual like that instant pow, right?
yeah.
But there's just something about it. I can't put my finger on it.
The beauty is free power, versus bolting on a blower or something like that.
The simplicity of it. It's just the simplicity of it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and how it transforms a car from a kitten into a tiger. The right setup. It'll turn it right around. Yeah, yeah.
Steve, we've been at it for 1 hour and 48 minutes. If you can believe this happens every time you and I get together. It's like, oh shit, look what time it is, right? But we have about 660 people, and and so I'm sorry if we've been ignoring the audience. This isn't like the kind of usual live that we do. But anybody have anything to ask Steve about? Feel free. Now's the time to go for it. You got anything you want to ask him or tell him or suggest to him?
Yeah.
Okay, saying, I wonder if Steve, where is it? I wonder if Steve will eventually cover every car at Bernardston.
Yeah, that's true. It's Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts. And like I say, when I first got there, I said, oh, look at all these cool cars. And I realized, okay, we got the good ones already. Oh, no, now what? Turns out that a Ford Maverick 4-door is okay. Reality is we're probably about 80 cars away from car zero when there's nothing left. Okay. So it is true. We will cover everything. I won't do like 6-year-old SUVs and stuff, and the good news is I have 2 other yards ready to go for when we get to car zero at Bernardston. But we've done about 280 videos, 280 cars out of Bernardston. There's a lot of good stuff, but again, about 80 left. So yes, eventually every car will be covered. That's worth covering. Anything that's too new, I'm not going to bother. Go back in 10 years, I'll hit them.
It's a good one. Ed Grant, Steve, how's the car you got in Texas?
Yeah, it's not a sore subject, but I made the mistake of and again, I have to I have Shane the camera guy 1 day a week, right? So we do our junkyard videos, and that's all my time with Shane. And I do have a tendency, I need to have a camera there, But anyway, I bought a 62 Dodge police car in Texas, did 9 videos on it, and then it went dormant. And it's still in my garage, but I won't dig in until I know I'm going to finish it and have a camera guy there so I can shoot it and make videos. Otherwise, what's the point? So it is sleeping, but a lot of folks go, what's up with the cop car? And every once in a while I do put hey, it'll be back when it's back. In the meantime, I don't know. So that's the answer, but yeah. So don't start something you don't finish.
Klein Lawn Care and Snow Plowing wants to know, this is a good question. What is the most unique junkyard crawl you have done?
Well, I have to say, this goes back to Roadkill's Junkyard Gold. We went to a place called Rambler Ranch in Elizabeth, Colorado, very high elevation. And the place was owned by this millionaire dude named Terry. I forget his last name, but a good dude. All AMCs, everything from Hudsons to, Jeep Wagoneers and everything in between. And in the place were live elk wandering around. It's a nature preserve. And so the drone operator, Wiley Stevens, you'll see him on Roadkill, he actually took the drone and flew it over the heads of the elk as they just looked up and chewed their grass, not having seen a drone before. And it was a winter wonderland, beautiful place, but Rambler Ranch. We did like 7 videos up there, 7 shows actually. So that was magical. Deer and elk walking through the junkyard and not being afraid of us. That was amazing. So that was probably it. Yeah.
Luke Floyd says, tell Steve I love his videos. Luke is speaking for probably every single person on this live right now, including myself.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that you are the future king of YouTube.
Well, no, it's fun to give the cars a voice. I love that. It's fun. Yeah. And doing stuff like, I don't know, showing model cars and stuff. I've worked for other things. Nah, don't show those. They're toys. I'm like, what are you talking about? So it's nice to have nobody to tell you that's not a good idea, because it usually is.
This is great. All right. Steve, did you see the video I did about 2 weeks ago on that Mr. Norm's 426 wedge carnet?
Yes, I did. Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. As you know, the 426 wedge theoretically wasn't being made in 1966, right? And something says to me it's possible. Was there a fender tag? Was there anything there in the way of a fender tag?
Yes, and it had the H in the VIN.
Yeah, did it have anything on it like promotional or test car? Is there anything at all? Did you have Dave Wise look at it? Because he's pretty good at digging under the. He's
Galen Govier went through all of the paperwork.
Okay.
And he confirmed it's one of 3 known to exist.
Yeah. So it's
one of 3 counted for. One of them doesn't exist anymore.
And was the
one of them is in Canada and has been converted to a Hemi car.
Yeah, because the guy thought he was doing the right thing. He saw the age.
Right.
He thought he was good. He went with the cubes, not the head. Yeah, that was an interesting, weird car. That's all I can say about that. I guess never say never. And as you know, a guy named Marvin Hughes down in Florida, Marvin's Gardens, Gromer's written about him and stuff. In 66, there was an RO23 package in 66, a street Hemi, and apparently with a cross ram. And Marvin Hughes had paperwork on one. It was basically, it was the same. They made 1 or 2, whatever it was. It was a 66.
That's one I've never heard of.
Yeah, if you Google Marvin Hughes, H-U-G.
Well, I know Marvin Hughes. I talked to him years ago.
Yeah, and unless he was pulling my leg hard, he was the same guy, the 64 Hemi Dodge 440, the turquoise car, 4-speed, that steel nose thing. He had that car too at the time, way back when. But he had a 66. I think it was a Plymouth, RO23 equivalent before 67, 2-door sedan, and his paperwork says cross ram, and it was not built at the last second, but he had one, or a damn good clone.
And it was an old car.
It was a real car. Yeah, it was a rolling shell.
It was an old car. It had an RO.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is, I don't recall, but it had paperwork from Dick Maxwell, etc., Cahill, and it was basically the proposed 66 super stock Hemi, and there he had one. So this street wedge 66 thing, weird, but I never saw it in print, but there it is. Yeah, cool car. I don't doubt it at all. And H doesn't always mean Hemi. It can mean, I guess, 426. Now we know. Of course, it became a J in 67, but that's a weird one. Yeah. Oh, the hubcap. All right. Yeah, the hubcap game is I won't. That's a thing where Shane and I would go to the junkyard early on. It's like, it's July 98. It's 1,000 degrees. We do 6 videos. I don't want to do another one. So what we do instead is there was a van full of hubcaps. So I'd go in there for about 7 minutes and just grab them and show them. The only downside was it was always number 10 out of 10. People didn't like it. Crazy but true. So I did maybe 20 of them, a lot of them, did the whole van, but it's dormant because it didn't chart well. Not that that's the point of it, but I don't want to piss people off. So we just stopped doing that. It was also me being lazy, to be honest with you, because after 6 videos, I'm like, let's just do the hubcap van. You just wing it with these. And the van was full of weird 67 Coronet RT hubcap, all kinds of weird stuff, including plastic Sunbird hubcaps, all kinds of crap, and just stream of consciousness. It was good, but it didn't chart well, as they say. Like Casey Kasem would say.
Yeah, I've got a dog dish hubcap spotter's guide in the back of my head that I'm eventually going to do a video on. I don't think it's going to get any views, but I have to set the record straight on dog dish hubcaps.
Yeah, the 2 sizes. 2 sizes. There's 2 sizes.
Oh man, as a purist, it kills me. It kills me when I see 69 caps on a 66 car, or it's like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and even the drilled police stuff from the 70s, you don't put that on a car before 73. This drill. I mean, they're 74. Yes, indeed. Well, yeah, there you go. Right there. But yeah, it's a lot of even cop wheels on anything before 73, 4 when they came out the 6 slots. You know what I mean? Those don't belong on a 68 Charger. But hey, it's yours. You know what I mean? But yeah. So, but that's what the hubcap game was, and it might come back.
Plymouth Division caps on a 68 Coronet. It's like.
Yeah, there's a difference, folks. Yeah. But
let's see. Oldest model. You want to see that? He wants to see that video. What happened to the Chrysler Historian you're going to do a live with? Yeah, well, it's not just going to be just about the Black Ghost. I'm going to, you know him. You know the guy I'm talking about.
I know the story.
Well, no, I mean the historian.
Who would it be? There's a bunch.
He's a mutual friend. He's a mutual friend. You know him. He's from Detroit.
Okay.
Okay, but I don't want to, until I actually have him on here, I don't want to say his name.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Let's see. Todd Goss. Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
The name sounds familiar, but don't know. Yeah.
All right, and let's find one more here. Let's find one more. Steve, pick out a question there.
I can't see the roster. Yeah, this is why This is why I have Shane. No kidding, because I'm like, what computers? I hate to say it, but I don't know where to click to get the click going on. There's comments.
I have 2 super chats. I'm sorry. I have 2 super chats I need to get to. Need Metal sent one. Our auction price is stabilizing. I saw some restos at the last one on TV that seemed reasonable.
Well, if you're talking Barrett Jackson, the one in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, I would say that it was a buyer's market. But the thing of it is, each auction takes place in a different part of the country, and Las Vegas has never been that strong. Now, last year they did it on July 4th weekend, and there was nobody there, and that's a surprise. But of course, this was a little bit earlier. But Vegas is a funny one. I wouldn't say that's a sign of anything, but I don't even know. Sometimes the auction prices are these astonishingly high things that aren't repeatable. Don't know, but yeah, the market it can't do that forever. But I don't know. A lot of cars were sold for a reasonable sum. Put it like that.
Okay, and Jason Powell sent this. The way you guys talk about Mopars is how the guys that are 20 to 30 at work talk about Honda EK and EJ Civic catches. It's what they were raised around. The next classic, believe it or not. Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Yeah. I love those cars.
Yeah.
I seriously like. I have a very broad like taste in.
I have a smart car in the driveway. I have a 2004 Volvo V70. So I'm not down on, and I appreciate every car except for French cars. There's no way. That's no joke. I had a Le Car in high school, and I'm still scarred. I was the biggest loser because I had a freaking car with 3 lug nuts. You know what I mean? No car with 3 lug nuts. Well, my smart car has 3 lug nuts, but no, I like them all. But Hondas, they revolutionized the universe. Nothing wrong. In fact, did a video yesterday on a Volkswagen Jetta VR6, a V6 with 1 cylinder head. What? It was a 15-degree. So every car is something cool and worth talking about. Anyway.
Okay, Peugeot. Yeah, no, French cars. All right, so listen, Steve, we're at the 2-hour mark. Okay. Let's stop this madness now, and we'll get back together again.
Yeah,
soon. We can't go for too long because we haven't done it. I think the last one we did was like October of last year.
Yeah.
So we got to try to get together more often.
Yeah.
Right? Now, for anybody who has not subscribed to Steve's channel, he is this close to his 100,000 sub. He needs the plaque. Do I have a plaque?
Yeah, the plaque.
I got it here someplace, right? He doesn't even know about the plaque. That's the thing. We were talking on the phone the other day. It says, you got 100,000 subs, you get the plaque, you get the silver play button. He's like, what's that?
The only plaque I care about is in my heart. The plaque in my, no, I'm kidding. No, I'm 59. No, but no, that's cool. I'm thankful people watch, and I'm just so thankful that, I hate to say it, but network decision makers, oh man, they get in the way so often. So I'm thankful for YouTube. It just allows people to see stuff. And if they don't like it, they don't have to watch, but they tend to like, so thank you. That's all I can say about that.
That's I'm speaking for both of us, and we both feel very fortunate to have you guys. To be able to do what we do. To get paid to do what we do is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. I'm sure it is to you too. And we owe it to the viewers. You guys, thank you.
Yeah, and it's a circle. Anybody with a story to tell, make videos. I'll watch. It's cool. Yeah.
So all right. So just to wrap this up, Thursday night we do our regular show with Kiwi, our tech Q&A with Kiwi. So we'll be on Thursday night. Sunday night we do our regular Sunday Night Live. I'll get together with Steve. We'll figure out. We'll get together again sometime in August. Right. Let's try to make this a monthly thing.
Yeah, I like it. Right? Sure. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. Close calls, part 2, and they walked away.
Oh, I got a lot of those. I got to come up with some video because there's some video that main event video, and I just saw some commercials. Somebody's been running commercials from the 70s, 80s of cars that I was involved with.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of crash and burn there.
It's fair use. It's fair use, right?
So you can use, yeah. So I'm going to do a video about that stuff. So everybody, our mods, Ari, Fubar Zero, Fubar's been putting up links to your channel so people can go over there and subscribe. Go subscribe to Steve Maggs. Yeah. He's put links for our merch, hats and shirts and all of this other stuff. So Fubar is always helpful like that. And Ari and Zero, keeping everybody straight. And everybody contributed. Super chat, thank you so much. It's always appreciated. Never expected, always appreciated. And everybody contributed with just your presence and your conversation. Thank you equally. And anything you want to say, Steve?
Just thank you, Tony. And again, a major influence on me, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers, with writing that was very different and very honest and very East Coast. From the day, New York stuff was cool. Thank you for doing that.
Honestly, until we started doing lives together, you and I was like mentioning magazines. My magazine days was like taboo. I didn't want to talk about.
But it's cool.
You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I'm Uncle Tony. I never did any of this other stuff. I'm Uncle Tony, right? Yeah. But yeah, now I'm starting to embrace
cool.
my old days. Yeah. But we're gonna pull the plug here now. Right. And guys, thank you so much. And I'll see you Thursday night with Kiwi.
All right. Thank you.
Good night, all.